Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, today's Thursday, July 30th, 2026, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. This was supposed to be an amazing economy, the golden age, flourishing. Well, guess what? The GDP numbers are in, and they suck. Economist Morgan Harper will be joining us. In Wisconsin, shocking developments. Mandela Barnes, the former lieutenant governor, is ending his campaign. What in the hell is happening in Wisconsin? New data shows that black voters across the South are pissed off and are turning out in huge numbers. We'll tell you why. On Tuesday, Michigan voters head to the polls for their primary elections. I talked with Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, who wants to be the U.S. Senate choice from Michigan. You don't want to miss this conversation. Plus, a new report confirms that black men and boys face persistent economic disparities in education, employment, and household wealth. Dr. Wes Bellamy will be joining us. Plus, we've got the latest updates in the Nolan Wells case, where audio of a 911 call is leading to even more questions about what happened to the black 18-year-old Mississippi teen. And in Texas, the family of an unarmed black teen killed by police are not buying the claim that their 17-year-old committed suicide by a cop. We'll show you the body cam video. Folks, it's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Look for the second quarter of 2026 to be amazing as all this money comes back into the economy from this big, beautiful bill, which really takes care of Americans. Finally, the president has the power to take care of Americans. Someone actually in the White House cares about the real people of America.
Mr. Secretary, only
Fives. You're going to see fives in the greatest economy in the world. You're going to see fives. And people think, you can't.
I mean, 5% GDP on a base this big is just, it's enormous.
Right. We have a $30 trillion, so 5% is $1.5 trillion in growth. And if we cut rates, you'll see sixes. And people would never, before Donald Trump walked into that office, don't think that's possible. And what's six mean?
Let's just put six in context. Six was China at its peak under central planning with a tight control on every aspect of its economy. That was what the world knew as what six looked like in the modern era. And now the alternative version of six will be the president, you, the team, in a much more open way. I'll be shocked.
You would have said it could never happen.
I would be shocked. I mean, that's an incredible...
Okay. You're going to put it this way. You know, it wouldn't even be fun for you when we see the fives.
Yeah.
Because they'll be so soon. They could be this quarter, as in the first quarter. So then I'd say, well, you have to come back and see me when it's 2.5. But then you'll come back in a couple of months, and then you'd say, Howard, I just spoke to you for an hour. I don't need to speak to you again. But you're going to see fives, like as in early in 26.
That's incredible.
And then if they cut rates, and that's the thing, I need a new Fed chair who cuts rates. And if they cut rates,
sixes.
You'll see sixes. And what you're going to see, what that means is jobs are abundant.
Yeah.
Good jobs are abundant. High-paying jobs are abundant.
Right.
Construction jobs, you just get paid more money to be who you are. You make more money. And that is not inflation. That is called 6% GDP growth.
Oh, wow. That was Howard Lutnick, our Commerce Secretary, predicting this amazing, wonderful, just transformative economy. I was looking for that meme. I couldn't find it. Remember the little kid is in the back of the car? He goes, bullshit? That's what you just heard. New federal data out shows that U.S. economic growth has slowed significantly in the second quarter of 2026, amid a widening in the trade deficit and, of course, the country's war with Iran. The GDP increased just 1.5% last quarter, beneath the 2.1% it was expected by economists. And again, light years away from that bullshit. Take a look at what Trump's, now remember, this is what his Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said, okay? I'm going to find for you and I'm going to play for you what Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said, okay? Just more BS. That's all they've actually done. It's all been a lie. He lies, they lie, and the dumb American voters who voted for this idiot, they fell for the okie doke, and we had a great economy that rebounded coming out of COVID with Biden-Harris, and this fool promised it was going to be grander, but it's not. Midterms are approaching. Republicans are scrambling because they're getting their butts kicked. Then you have this idiot, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., amid complaints about beef prices being too high, and he decides to go, beef? Why are you worried about beef?
And this is true all over the country. There's a lot of good food in grocery stores that goes away. Most of the cheap cuts of meat are very inexpensive. If you buy a porterhouse steak or a strip steak, it is gonna set you back. You can buy liver or the cheaper cuts of steak that are very, very affordable.
I'm sorry. Did Mr. Worm in the Brain actually say, well, you don't have to worry about buying a porterhouse steak. Forget ground beef. You could go buy some liver. Okay, my mama likes liver. I can't stand liver. The only thing that I think I've consistently eaten liver in is when my daddy makes dirty rice. And hell, I think he stopped even using liver in the dirty rice. So if you actually think I'm going to sit here and say, let me get a New York strip steak or a porterhouse steak or some ground beef, and I'll go ahead and try the liver, you out your damn mind. And I guarantee you, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. ain't eating liver. Trump's new Fed chair is admitting that Donald Trump's own stupendous, ignorant, shameful, ridiculous, and clueless war with Iran is actually making inflation worse.
How are you factoring the fact that a large portion of the inflation overshoot is being caused by supply shocks, as it's mentioned again in the statement? Does that blunt the effectiveness of rate hikes in your view?
First, on the premise of your question, it was almost as if you were listening to our discussion the last day and a half. A lot of our focus was on trying to understand and identify underlying inflation dynamics amid shocks. We take these shocks seriously. There have been a series of them that have been hitting this economy. We're not looking through them and saying, oh, they don't matter. What we're trying to understand is to what extent are these shocks broadening in their effects, broadening in their impact on prices that are quite far removed from it. Our goal is to have growth that is broadening and inflation that is becoming more limited, more circumscribed. I'll be the first to admit the shocks make this job and this policy conjuncture a little tougher.
Wow. Joining us now, Morgan Harper, Director of Policy and Advocacy for the American Economic Liberties Project. Morgan, glad to have you here. All they have been doing, Morgan, is lying. They have just been sitting here saying, let's just throw some shit on the board, let's see if it sticks. That's all we got going on here. And so their own nonsensical, utterly ridiculous policies have been destroying the economy. Trump's stupid tariffs, okay, This idiot, y'all find me the clip again. This idiot, we played the other day. This idiot goes to Michigan and is standing there with the General Motors executive, the CEO, and her top leadership. Oh my God, my tariffs have been amazing for General Motors. Oh, except the $3.1 billion they've lost because of your tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, it would be funny, Roland, if this wasn't real life. And I think you're right. I mean, for folks who were saying, and I spoke to some people like this, oh, they've got a plan. There's going to be a grand vision for how they're rebuilding the economy. Like you in that first clip you played. I mean, that guy, that's asking the question he's talking to is supposed to be one of these titans of Silicon Valley, startup expert, investment expert, all of this. It's crazy, the number of people who were duped by this. But yeah, the numbers are telling a very clear story that we are not seeing great growth, actually slowing and a reduction or something coming in lower than expectations in terms of GDP growth. And I just want to take a second to make sure everybody understands what's going into that GDP calculation is a combination of how much we're spending, how much the government is spending, the net export. So how much, what are we sending off that we're building as a country versus what we have to bring in from other places, and investment. And based on the numbers that we're seeing from this last quarter, the main thing that's driving even this very low level of growth relative, especially to the expectations that they were throwing out there, 5-6%, it does seem like it's mostly consumer spending and business investment in AI. So, and part of what's bringing it down is that for that AI investment, we have to import a lot of materials like things like semiconductor chips to build, all these things that are going into powering data centers and all of this. And so it's not a good state of affairs. And I would add another thing to this in terms of okay, so this is still a little bit of growth, but there's some risks in those two areas that are driving the growth, which is our spending and the business investment. And let's start with the consumer part. I think we all know this. I mean, just like you were saying with the beef prices are going up. So how much more can we as consumers continue to prop up the economy based on how much we're able to buy? And yeah, okay, more you'll see in some of the analysis, labor market is okay, but we're not getting as much for the wages that we're earning. Beef prices going up. The other data that came out today is showing just across the board how prices are continuing to go up for some of the core goods that we have to buy. And things that aren't even included in that calculation, like gas, is back up over $4 a gallon. And so, that's a real risk. If these shocks continue, which they will, because this is just the nature of this administration, is to inject shocks, not try to manage them or reduce them or actually promote growth with another round of tariffs, then it's not clear consumers are going to be able to keep up these GDP even at this minimal rate. The other thing I would say about the business investment, and again, this is not business investment in real infrastructure spending, building things. It's a lot more the software, AI, data centers. It's not clear that's going to continue. I mean, one, I think there's some policy risks around that, just as the mood is shifting, the voter sentiment and how policymakers are responding to things like data centers. But then also, and you're starting to see this even from a lot of Wall Street folks, just how much the economy is weighted towards AI and how much of that investment is going towards AI doesn't seem sustainable. People don't think that it's actually going to prove to be a strong return on that. And that might not keep up either. So wherever you look at these numbers, I think there's again, it's a very, very modest rate of growth as it's happening, nothing near like the expectations. And even with that little bit of growth, some serious risk that even that can continue.
Yeah, I just sit here and laugh, and you're absolutely right. All this AI spending reminds me of the internet bubble of 1.0, when it was just dumb spending. I mean, it was just utterly ridiculous. And I really don't understand the billions upon billions that they are building on data centers. And you're like, okay, exactly how you gonna make the money back? Because essentially, all they're doing is buying from each other. Okay, right. I mean, it's like literally OpenAI, buy from NVIDIA, buy from. It's just that's all that's going on here. And they claim, oh no, this is one of it. So yes, all these major institutional investors are making a boatload of money, and I think what's going to happen is they're going to dump a lot of their money, and really what's happening with our economy is akin to any idiot who bought stock in Donald Trump's technology company, and how they fared.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, getting back to the data center point, not only is it creating this risk in the market, but then that's also another driver of our costs as consumers going up with utilities. There's these talks around and proposals around, they'll pay their fair share. Well, paying your fair share depends on somebody that can tell the largest companies in the world what to do and that they have to listen. And that has not proven to be the case in interacting with these big tech firms and government policymakers. So I wouldn't have a lot of comfort in folks that saying, oh, we're cutting deals with them, they're going to pay their fair share, that we won't be the ones that, again, are carrying the bag and having to cover the costs for these things. And just one more example I would give on the beef prices in terms of like who's really running away here. I mean, there was a case that was brought under the Biden administration. It was called AgriStats to try to take on some of the collusion and corruption that was happening in the meat industry, driving up costs for consumers. That case was settled by the Department of Justice. Now, luckily, we're seeing some states that are taking, and plaintiffs actually, that are taking some action there on their own. But yeah, this administration is benefiting their friends. They're putting the costs on us, regular people. And the only hope we have is for some of these state enforcers to stop it, like attorneys generals are doing. But to your earlier point, Roland, having some shift in power come next January in 2027 is really essential to put a stop, or to begin to try to put a stop to some of this.
So, folks, let me just give y'all some laughter, if you will. Here's the Treasury Secretary in November 2025 on Fox News.
Go back to the non-inflationary growth. But look, we are working on this every day, and my prediction is that first quarter, second quarter, what we are going to see is we have brought the inflation down. It is curving down. And real income, the other side of that equation is real income growth, and we are going to see this from all this investment.
Would a $2,000 tariff dividend check going to people be inflationary?
Well, there are a lot of things that are going to happen next year.
Is that one of them?
And that could be one of them. And again, maybe we could persuade Americans to save that, because one of the things that's going to happen next year is the Trump accounts. Every child who was born from January 1st for the next 3 years is going to get a government account that goes into the stock market. So every American child born for the next 3 years, starting January 1st, is going to have that. They can take it out when they're 18. They're going to learn the power of compounding, and there's going to be a lot of financial literacy around that. And I think the reason that we saw kind of the disastrous election in New York is young people don't feel like they have a stake in the economy, so we want to give them a stake in the economy.
We know that the health...
I'm sorry, I don't recall that $2,000 ever showing up in these so-called Trump accounts. Was really a massive tax write-off for Dell. By the way, Donald Trump traded Dell stocks and bought a ton of Dell stocks, and when he made the announcement, he made a lot of money. Now, that was November 2025. If y'all really want to see sheer stupidity, here's Scott Bessent in April of 2026 saying, no, it's really not the economy, and it's really not what we're seeing in the polling. It's just, really, it's a feel thing.
Why aren't we seeing this sentiment? Why are people feeling better?
Well, when I was in the investment business, there are consumer surveys, but I used to look at what are the people really doing. So at Treasury, we have loads of CEOs come through, whether they're in retail, credit card, the banks, and the consumer, while they may be sounding grim, is actually quite buoyant. Mm-hmm. So we are seeing spending has been very solid across most categories.
So they might not feel good, but...
Well, look, in the heart of hearts, they feel good.
In the heart of hearts, Morgan, they feel good.
Well, if there's one thing I trust Scott Bessent to know, it's what's happening in the heart of every American. So that's a great relief. Yeah, we don't have to take anybody, or Scott Bessent at his word. The polling shows exactly where consumers are at. They're nervous. They're uncertain about where the economy is going. They're worried about rising prices, which the data is showing is a real concern. And I want to come back to one thing he said. Who are they talking to? They're talking to CEOs. They have a direct line on how they're doing. And I bet they are doing pretty well, because coming back to that consumer spending, the data is also showing higher income earners likely driving a lot of this spending. And so I imagine he is getting good reports from CEOs of America. But here we are, the rest of us in reality. And again, I mean, it's just wild. The other thing I would say about this data, because I'm sure folks will see this in some of the coverage, there has been a bit of a bump for some consumers because of tax refunds that came. This was one of the promises, the big beautiful bill, tax refunds coming, and so. Okay, that's kind of like a little bit of money, one hit. That is 100% not going to last. We all know that. And that's something that, is also likely to be helping some higher income earners. And so, yeah, this isn't a real plan. The other thing I would say is on the tariffs, because he was like, oh, yeah, we might get some consumer dividends, back from the tariffs. Not only are consumers not seeing anything, they're not even letting businesses in any sort of efficient way get their money back on some of these tariffs that have been found, to not have been done legally. And so, yeah, it's a lot of risk all around us. I know we talk about this every month, Roland, and regularly, and we're just continuing to see the signs of it, and a need for a different course here.
Folks, it's actually just utterly hilarious. That line about, oh, you CEOs, they come talk to me and things are great. I'll never forget when I was at CNN. It was 2009. We were at the upfronts, and that was a panel, and David Gergen was on the panel. Late David Gergen, he advised 4 presidents, and CNN treated him like he was a god. A little G God, and it was like, oh, how dare you ever disagree with David Gergen? I'm like, well, when his ass is wrong, he's wrong. And I'll never forget sitting there on the panel, and let me say this again. This was the upfronts, and I think it was 2009. So we had just had the election. We were literally mired in an economic calamity. I remember him saying, I've talked to a lot of CEOs, and things are really going well in the country. And I went, well, I've talked to a lot of CEOs of households, and I can guarantee you it's not. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And that's really what you're dealing with here. Scott Bessent is worth millions of dollars. Lutnick, same way. Trump's cabinet is the richest in history. These rich people, all they do is spend their time with rich people. They don't go out in the world. You've never seen Scott Bessent in a low-income neighborhood of black people, brown people, or even poor white people. You haven't seen that. They don't do that. Lutnick is not going to do that. They're not spending any time there. And so these people are sitting here, and let me just be clear, Morgan, they're raping and pillaging the country. What they're doing is massive insider trading in this administration. They are they are stealing from this economy. They are awarding massive billions of dollars in contracts to Jared Kushner, to the Trump children, and everyone else. And all of these, and we're going to talk about it next, all these MAGA people, they don't care. They don't care what these thugs do. And I'm sitting here going, they are playing y'all for fools. And hopefully, Morgan, folk wake up and go to the ballot box in November and penalize these thugs.
I hope so, Roland, because, yeah, I mean, this is one of the most corrupt administrations in history. You are right. I mean, we can go through, there's been deal after deal that it's pay to play. If you can get in front of the White House or give some money for the ballroom or the inauguration, then your deal gets through. I mean, we could have a whole show about the deals that have gone through and how they're benefiting very, very rich people that are friends with the president. I agree with you. I mean, this is a time to kind of wake up. I'm glad you're going to be talking to Abdul El-Sayed, who's running in Michigan, and some of the policies he's running on. I saw he was in a video yesterday talking about some former Republican voters who now are shifting his way. I don't think that should be the basis of our strategy, if that's a different political conversation. But yeah, I mean, it's people are out here starving. I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying that. And Scott Bessent, these guys do not care one bit. And it's disgusting. And we just need to make sure that people really understand, the risks and really the need to turn out and make sure we can get rid of these guys.
I'm in a question
in a nonpartisan way, since I'm at American Economic Liberties Project.
Right. So, you speak nonpartisan. I speak black. All right. Let me go to my panel with a question or comment. Joining us, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University, joining us from D.C. Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show, joining us from D.C. on Sirius XM Radio. Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, host of the Fearless Politics Podcast, National Harbor, Maryland. Reese, your question or comment first.
Yes, Morgan, can you speak to kind of Kevin Warsh and his insistence on trying to avoid raising the interest rates, but the markets are already reacting with higher yields? Can you talk a little bit about that for people who don't know the dots, how the dots connect in terms of their interest rates, credit cards, mortgages, and card notes and things of that nature if they're looking to get some new debt?
Yeah, I mean, and thanks for the question. Good to see you. As the interest rates are going up, then it isn't as if the Fed is raising interest rates, so then automatically all of our interest rates go up, but there is a connection. The banks are monitoring what the Fed is doing and then deciding how they're going to be able to set rates for some of the consumer products that we all might be getting, mortgage, car loan, et cetera. And so, they're going to do that when they feel like they need to kind of slow things down a little bit. But given what we saw in this data that was just announced, it doesn't seem like the economy's off to the races by any means. And so, that's what we're kind of hearing. They're likely to sort of keep things where they're at right now, but where they're at is pretty high. So coming back to what I was talking about earlier with the type of business investment we're seeing, for the average business owner, I mean, these interest rates are quite high to be able to borrow money, get capital to build your business. Who can still operate at very high interest rates? Well, it's the companies that have the most access to capital and resources. And so, if we don't see those come down, then it's going to continue to depress the type of business activity that our small businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs that we might know that are based in our communities would need to be able to build, and instead going to continue to favor some of these very, very large corporations that are really, as we were talking about earlier, shifting the economy in the direction of AI and introducing a lot of risk that will likely end up impacting us as consumers as well, and more so than it already has.
I know Morgan has to go. Does Greg or Avis have a question for her?
I do have a super quick question. At the very beginning of the show, Roland referenced back to Trump's reference to a golden age. And I consider this particular age, in terms of what he has bought in through the big robber baron bill, which is what I would call it, is a new gilded age. With what we are seeing with regards to all of the spoils that have been given to the richest of society, and the way that the rest of us are being pilfered. My big picture question for you is, how long is this sustainable? Will we see a bit of a return in history from the last time that this was done, and what actually happened as a result of that?
It's a great question. I wish I had infinite time actually to answer all these questions. All of it are really good. So I work at a place called American Economic Liberties Project. We're focused on breaking up monopolies. A lot of the policies we push for, like, to break up monopolies, are rooted and actually were based on laws that were passed in the last Gilded Age, about 100 years ago. So I think you're absolutely right. What we're experiencing now, very similar set of circumstances where we're seeing this concentrated wealth that's being translated into concentrated wealth in the economy, translated into concentrated political power and corruption of our government, and our government being captured by the most economically powerful entities, both in the US and globally. And what we saw then in reaction to that were some of these laws getting passed that were transformative and really were then able to be used to build out a more stable middle class in the US until, the 70s or so, when we moved into deregulation, Reaganism, neoliberalism, that's kind of sent us down the tubes for the past 40 years. So I remain hopeful, and I think this is why some of the political races that are happening right now are so important. The policies people are running on so important. should a different set of people have power, there is likely going to be an opportunity for transformative policymaking because things are so bad, just like they were 100 years ago. And I hope that folks will see that opportunity to really go for the jugular and shift things in a direction that's going to support a strong working class, Black working class in this country. And we might not get another opportunity. So there's no reason to go small here. And if Donald Trump has shown us nothing, it's that anything is possible when you get power, and we should use it in a positive direction to really support our people.
All right, Morgan, we still appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Roland.
It really is wild, Greg, when you look at just how completely insane these people are. This is Republican National Committee Chair Joe Gruters, and they just lie so easily.
But the president, on the flip side, has been working since day one of this administration to go to bat for the average American worker. Look at the working family tax cuts and what he did. And no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. He understands the pain and suffering that real people are facing every day with gas prices, and he's trying to...
No, he's not trying, Greg. He's trying to get as rich as he can in the next 2 years. That's what he's trying to do.
That's what he's trying to do. And Ava says a hell of a question because Morgan gave a chance to Morgan to stretch out there. You know, it's not sustainable. First of all, is there a single person in this criminal enterprise who looks like someone other than the kids who got laughed at in high school? Every last one of these people. Anyway, all right. So that makes it easier for the people to vote for them. Anyway, but. And Morgan said it, and you said it. They are stealing, and they got these lemmings up here who are basically, because they're lying to them, just engaged in the fantasy. And the lie is the point. They have separated any notion of truth. Truth is out the window. Now they just say it's a lie. And so whether it be that porcelain-fronted Howard Lutnick, friend of Epstein, chilling at the island, going to see his next-door neighbor, the grifter, whether it be all of them profiting, talk about Nepo babies, Lutnick's two boys, with running Cantor Fitzgerald, Brandon and Kyle, they in the bed now with these critical mineral deals all around the world. And of course, Bozo is barging into countries, and then here comes Cantor Fitzgerald with the two boys. The only Nepo boys that outdo them are the Kushner boys. Mr. Dead Man Soup Kushner propped up by the Saudi billions, and now you see his younger brother Joshua is trying to buy 20% of FIFA. 20% of FIFA. That broke this week. Congressman Raskin is going to try to drag the head of FIFA to the hill, and the EU is already like, what the hell are y'all doing? And this is all stealing. And as for Typhoid Bobby Kennedy, you need to be worried about measles and cyclospora. Leaked Dr. Fauci's diary to that crazy-ass Randy Paul, who should be worried about the measles outbreak, but is going after him. And then you got this guy Kennedy talking crazy because, as you said, either a worm ate his brain or something else happened. And you saw Senator Bernie Moreno up there dropping the F-bomb, yelling at Fauci when he should be trying to protect his daughter and grandbaby from that crazy-ass congressman who's accused of beating them both up. And so what we have now is a completely out of control patriarchy, white male elite, financial elites. And as they are doing that, they are trying to, they know the clock is ticking. So they got that little worm, nasty piece of work, Russell Vought, running around in basements and attics trying to come up with different ways to finagle imposing new tariffs and moving all this stuff forward so they can just squeeze out a little bit more time. Finally, Morgan said it. This might be the last time that we can put the brakes on this stuff. And unfortunately, too many of our people think that somehow either this can be reversed or it's not going to impact them. They are straight stealing on a global level. And the only way that we're going to stop them is to hike up our big boy pants, our big girl pants, and get in that ballot box and at least try to put the brakes on some of this stuff in the next few months.
And just one more for you all. Check this out. Go to my iPad. January 2025, Americans were saving about $9,000 a year. Guess what they're saving now? $5,000 a year. So when Scott Bessent said in November, we want to give them $2,000 and we hope they start saving and they can experience compound interest. Nope, they're experiencing compound losses, Scott. But then again, I'm quite sure your investment accounts have actually gone up a tremendous number. All right, we come back. We're going to talk about the drama out of Wisconsin. The former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes shockingly drops out of the race. Also, new poll shows MAGA don't give a damn about no scandals or even sexual harassment. They're going to vote for the candidates anyway. Democrats, we tried to tell you. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare, so she called Chapter, a Medicare advisory company, and she texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing, and now she understands better what's going on. But it's not just her. A woman in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. So what does she do? She called Chapter. They found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds of dollars less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from our community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Yet Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you. No games, and people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100 a year. All it takes is 20 minutes. You talk to a real person, and it's completely free help. So call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. That's Chapter.
Let me ask you a question. Why do so many people seem to think they know black men so well? What they think we want, what they think we need. Hell, they even tried to tell us why and how we voted, but never had a conversation with us. Never asked us how we felt, what brings us joy, what makes us angry, what makes us scared. How do we live? That's what this show is about. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. We can speak for ourselves. This will be a show where we bring brothers on that you don't see on every other talk show. Nope. Brothers that are doing work in local communities with black men for black communities. We're going to hear each other and try to understand so perhaps we can move forward together. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. Nope. What we need is each other. No translation, right here on the Black Star Network. Check it out.
What's up, y'all? This is Wendell Haskins, a.k.a. Win Hogan at the Original T Golf Classic. And you know I watch Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, stunning developments in Wisconsin. Their primary is literally a couple weeks away. And former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes announced he is dropping out in his race for governor. That's right. The announcement came via social media. He explains why.
Last night I had a very difficult conversation with my staff. Now we're incredibly proud of all the things that we've accomplished and all the resources that we have raised to spread our message. But it's become very clear who our nominee is going to be. Now I said from the very beginning when I launched this campaign that the number one goal was taking on and defeating Tom Tiffany to deliver big wins for Democrats up and down the ticket. And now it's our time to come together, to focus our efforts on that one goal. We have to do everything to beat Tom Tiffany. This is life or death for Wisconsinites who are losing their health care under a Trump administration, people who can't afford child care, the folks who are being squeezed by bills while the rich continue to get richer. Now I got in this race because we're living in a rigged system. The rich are getting richer while the rest of us are left scrambling for crumbs. I know this firsthand. That's why I've always fought for better. As a legislator, as an organizer, as your lieutenant governor. Now, while I may be suspending this campaign, I'll never give up my fight for Wisconsin. And I'm incredibly grateful for all the folks who joined this campaign, for the people who believed in me and this movement, knew that we had a real shot at creating opportunities through bold action to improve quality of life for every single person that calls this place home. Now, we have to do everything we possibly can to defeat Tom Tiffany. And that's exactly what I'm committed to doing for the next 96 days.
Okay, so what in the hell is going on here? Go to my iPad. This is the Associated Press story. 1 second, don't go yet. Let me get rid of this pop-up ad. Give me 1 second, close this. All right, this is what the AP story said. First and foremost, you've got Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong, who is leading in a huge way in the polls. It says Barnes' decision to drop out came a day after the release of a Marquette Law School poll of Wisconsin Democratic primary voters that found Hong leading Barnes and the other candidates by a significant margin, although 1/3 of primary voters remain undecided. Barnes said it's become very clear who our nominee is going to be, but it also says Barnes' move came on the same day that the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported that it had asked him about allegations of inappropriate behavior lodged with the state Democratic Party, local party officials, and others against him. Okay. I don't think there's, and y'all, I'm really trying not to cuss. I'm really trying not to cuss. But what's happening in Wisconsin has been a total clusterfuck. I mean, it is insane. You have a Democratic governor, Tony Evers, okay? You finally have, frankly, Democrats who've taken over the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They have an opportunity to break the Republican hold in the state legislature. And the governor's race has been completely insane. It has been insane. Here you have, again, Barnes, former lieutenant governor. Well, the current lieutenant governor was running. She dropped out. Then you had the brother, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, who was running, who then dropped out of the race, and then he got back in the race, and the current Democratic governor, Tony Evers, endorses Crowley. Then on top of that, you've got Democrats saying, if Hong is our nominee, we're going to get crushed by the Republican opponent at the ballot box in November, because Wisconsin is a very much a split state. Avis, this is a crazy, I've literally never heard of one of the top tier candidates resigning 2 weeks before the primary election, with even that poll 1/3 of the people undecided. You can't tell me he dropped out because of that poll. This is regarding the allegations. The Wisconsin Democratic Party received an anonymous letter in 2024 and again in 2025 making allegations against Barnes, a person with direct knowledge, go to iPad, with direct knowledge of the party's actions, told the Associated Press. The person was not authorized to speak publicly about the review. The party hired a law firm in 2025 to look into claims that Barnes used his position in the party to seek out inappropriate relationships with young adult women. The person said the review found nothing actionable because the allegations were anonymous and unspecific. The person with knowledge of the probe said Barnes' campaign issued a statement saying there are no allegations of misconduct or wrongdoing against Mandela. So if anonymous allegations are made and you say there's no truth to them, why would you drop out of the race just because a poll shows you down?
I don't know. You're exactly right. This is extremely unusual. It makes me wonder if there's something going on that remains unsaid, because it is completely nonsensical. Now, I will say what you just mentioned there about this allegation, but if the allegation seems to not have any substance, that should not be enough for him to drop out. It would be very easy, honestly, for anyone to make an allegation, anonymous allegation. So are you setting up a precedent where if people want to be targeted, all your opponents would have to do is have somebody phone in an anonymous allegation, and all of a sudden you're gonna fold? It just makes me feel like there are some unspoken things going on here that is really at the root of this, because it's hard for me to believe that the very thin slices of evidence that you've just shown would make somebody, drop out of the race, particularly someone with his background, and especially since the polling shows that a third of voters have yet to make up their mind about their vote. There's plenty of time left and plenty of people out there that were still in play. And so, honestly, it makes absolutely no sense to me at all. None at all.
So, Reese, go to my iPad. Marquette Law Poll finds expanded support for Hong in Democratic primary. Barnes sits second and Crowley third. Okay, so when you look at this poll, this is what it says, Reese. A new Marquette Law School poll survey of Democratic primary voters finds State Representative Francesca Hong leading with 38%, followed by former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes with 16%, and Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley at 7%. Former Department of Administration Secretary Joe Brennan is supported by 2%, and State Senator Kelda Roys is also the choice of 2%. In the previous Marquette Law School poll survey conducted July 8th through the 16th, Hong had 26% and Barnes had 15%. Crowley was not a candidate at the time of the earlier poll, while Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, who subsequently suspended her campaign, had 11%. But this is lying. In this poll, 34% of primary voters remain undecided, down from 45% in the previous poll. Ask for their second choice in the primary, 20% pick Barnes, 13% choose Crowley, 12% prefer Roys, with Hong receiving 8% of second choices and Brennan 7%. The remaining 40% say they haven't decided on a second choice. So even though this poll is not favorable to the Barnes campaign, I'm just befuddled why you would drop out when the election is in 11 days.
I have one word: donors. If the donors pull the plug on your campaign, you cannot mount a competitive campaign when you are 18 points behind. And this story about this alleged misconduct, it actually popped up on July 9th and with reporting from the Milwaukee Beagle. And so this story has had some legs, at least in Wisconsin, for a number of weeks. I believe that's probably likely why David Crowley popped back in the race after Sarah Rodriguez withdrew from the race, because they didn't want to pin all of their hopes on Mandela Barnes. And I think that they might have hoped that he would drop out sooner with the reporting and with some of the pressure that was happening behind scenes, allegedly. But he didn't do that. And so I think it probably became untenable for him to proceed with increasing intent to report on this. You already talked about the other newspaper that reached out to him today for a comment on this. And there really isn't much of an appetite right now, I don't think, from major party players, whether it's at the state level or other levels, to engage in any kind of Me Too allegations. And if you're explaining, you are losing. And we've seen misconduct allegations that have been launched and derailed campaigns, rightfully so, if you ask me. If you are doing things that are inappropriate, then you should not be running for higher office. And anonymous complaints can very easily turn into named complaints. Complaints can also very easily turn into more extensive complaints. We saw that with Plattner. And so I'm not passing judgment on the veracity of them. I'm not trying to impugn former Lieutenant Governor Barnes' character or say that he did anything wrong. But I think if you look at the political landscape that he was facing in Wisconsin, already running from behind, already having this story hang over, already preparing for this story to get bigger, he probably did not have much of a choice but to step aside.
Totally.
So that obviously makes things stronger for Huang, who's already in the lead. And I think that perhaps maybe Tony Evers and others were kind of hoping that David Crowley hopping in the race could provide a contrast to Huang that they're so scared about. So we'll see how this happens, but I don't think that this was something that just happened overnight. Like I said, this story, the reporting around this started going public around July 9th.
But here's what's interesting, Greg. This is a press release from July 15th, just 15 days ago, from the Barnes campaign. Go to my iPad. Mandela Barnes announces raising nearly $1.4 million in campaign for governor now. It says that not only that, an independent expenditure backing Barnes reported raising nearly $1 million, meaning More than $2.2 million has been raised to elect Mandela Barnes as governor. His campaign was up on TV with six figures behind Wisconsin Way. And they said the independent expenditure also has $500,000 behind a TV buy on top of an additional six-figure statewide digital ad campaign. So I totally understand Reese's point there about donors abandoning, but this was just 15 days ago. And now you have 11 days to go before this election. And so it is just striking. So this was just striking to me to see this story today. I can't remember. I don't know if y'all can. I can't remember of a top tier candidate leaving a race less than 2 weeks before election day. I mean, and I get it. Okay, let's just say with the allegations, they say no truth to them. Got it. Anything can change over the next 11 days. And if you got 1/3 people undecided, that means you're still in the race. This is strange to me, Greg.
Well, I mean, in that same article you were reading from, she is leading, or she was leading when poll Wong, that is, 22% among that 40% that's undecided. Yeah, they said if they had to pick, she was leading in that. And so, you know, and Reese laid it out, I think. First of all, Mandela Barnes, 39 years old. Second of all, if just a few more of us have gotten up off our asses, he would be in the United States Senate instead of that corpse.
Well, you're right. If a few of us had gotten off our asses to vote, but also if the Mandela Barnes, and trust me, he's not been happy with me because I've been saying this, and he and I had a conversation, but his campaign also did not aggressively target black people in Milwaukee because there was a 50,000 drop-off in the city of Milwaukee from the previous campaign. And we had Milwaukee activists on this show talk about how they had literally no relationship with his campaign, and the white boys over his campaign assumed black people were going to turn out. Well, and guess what? I think he lost by 26,000 votes. But I'm sorry, and let me just go ahead and say it, okay? Because I hit several other people. Not a single time during this election cycle. Now, and again, let me be clear. Mandela Barnes and I had several conversations after he lost to Senator Ron Johnson. Okay? Not a single time during this election cycle have we heard from the Barnes campaign to come on this show to talk about him running for governor. Now, even though I went to Texas A&M, he's a Kappa, with Aaron Ford, who's running for governor of Nevada, I've heard from him. I've heard from Governor Wes Moore. I've heard from other candidates. I ain't hear from Mandela Barnes, which is crazy after the several conversations that we had. But continue, please.
No. And Roland, I think what you just did is perhaps pulled on a thread that might have some explanatory force. Is it crazy? Is it crazy? Mandela Barnes looks like a party man. So what do we have in Wisconsin? Very evenly divided, as you said, Republicans, Democrat. Do you consolidate behind a candidate? And I don't want to, and later on you'll be talking, of course, to Dr. Sayed. So it'll be interesting to hear that conversation. There's a fight, of course, going on right now in the Democratic Party. The DNC is in terrible shape. Ken Martin running around hiding from people with that raggedy-ass report they put in. Ben Wickler is being reported as maybe running for that other Senate seat in 2028. Mandela Barnes is 39 years old. He's proven he's a Democratic Party man. And so maybe he's counting up and saying, do you want to be that guy that loses every election? You lost the Senate, then you lost the governor. If he runs in 28, they can say, hey, you stood up and saluted when you needed to salute. And let's be crystal clear about this. There's only one major party in the United States of America for which scandal is a problem. For the White Nationalist Party, scandal is actually a badge of honor. Again, I go back to Senator Moreno, whose daughter testified that her husband, Moreno's son-in-law, what's the guy's name? Max Miller, a second-term Republican congressman in Ohio, did what? Scalded her chest, and stomach, throwing hot water on her with us from a skillet, held a gun to her head, pushed her against a wall, hit her head, fractured their 2-year-old daughter's collarbone and bruised her shoulder. And guess what? In his district, that might be something. I'm going to vote for him. But when it comes to the Democrats and a black Democrat, man, you better not even look sideways. This man, when he was like 20, 21 years old, he had some kind of lingerie party. They tried to hang that around his neck. A college guy, and was tagged on a social media post. I'm just saying, Mandela Barnes made a counted up the cost and said, look, if I'm going to run in 28 for this Senate seat, let's say that Wong wins the governor. Hey, now they throw it all behind Barnes. If she loses, he still comes out like, okay, Barnes had the sense, he's a team player. I think there's a lot of angles to this. And what you said, Roland, might be one of those clues to help us understand the logic of a Mandela Barnes, who ain't never really come toward the black community in a way that we might prefer, but might be calculating that as a loyal Democrat in Wisconsin. We just don't know.
I just want, listen, when the brother, I'm not going to say who it was, but I remember sending a text message. When was this? Give me 1 second. This was July 17th. And it was the day the lieutenant governor quit the race. So I text a prominent black activist in Milwaukee. I said, saw this. Then the person says, LOL, wait for tomorrow's news. And then later that day, Crowley got back into the race. Then this person said, this is who the community rocks with. And Crowley, of course, is the Milwaukee County executive. Now, again, Crowley had dropped out. Barnes was still in. And I was like, wow, this brother's actually, like, what the hell's going on here? And so I have not seen any.
Can I just say real quick, he dropped out the day before that Milwaukee Beagle article. He dropped out July 8th, and that article came out July 9th.
And
he might not have dropped out had that article came out first.
Ah, gotcha. Well, this is all, and
I'm speculating. I don't know. I'm just
no.
Over here.
No. All you're doing, first of all, you're just stating facts. He dropped out on the 8th. Article came out on the 9th.
Yeah.
This is the thing that also really jumps out at me, and we're gonna hear from some of this when people see my Saeed interview, because his answer to this Democratic Socialists of America, people are going to be very interesting how he answered that question. But there are a lot of Democrats, Greg. These are national Democrats who are scared to death. Literally, I had one of them say, "Give me 1 second."
Absolutely.
Give me 1 second. See, I love, because everybody, see, this is why we deal with facts. So an extremely prominent national Democrat, when I sent the Barnes dropout, said, we're going to lose this race, SMDH. And
come on.
No, and so what you have this sentiment that because she is DSA, they're going to lose Wisconsin. But Greg, could these Democrats be completely missing the real subplot here? And that is, if you look at what Hong or Wong, not sure how to pronounce her name, if you look at what she's speaking to, if you look at what Mamdani was speaking to,
come on.
If you look at to what the sister was speaking to, her name escapes me, who won in D.C. If you look at where these candidates,
Janice George.
Okay, there you go, Janice George.
Yeah, Janice George.
If you look at how they've been running, maybe what Democrats should be saying is, what are they speaking to and saying, as opposed to Democrats being listening to too many Republicans and getting caught up in the title, Greg?
What you call them, Roland? Them smart-ass white boys? There's a fight going on in the Democratic Party. What was it, 2 weeks ago you talked with Chris Rabb? out of Philly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you're talking about human issues, when you're talking about people's stomachs, when you're talking about people's bank accounts, when you're talking about people's children, when you're talking about the aches and pain that people have that they can't go to the doctor because they don't have health care, they're trying to hang the label Democratic Socialist on brown people's neck. But here's the problem. People are chewing on it, and they're finding they like the taste. So when you talk to Zoran Mamdani, what did he say? He said, I'm not the first Democratic Socialist mayor of New York. That would be David Dinkins, who was a card-carrying member of the DSA. And so the boogie tactic is not working. Now, as far as the Democrats are concerned, listen, I can't figure it out. Well, I don't want to say I can't figure it out. I'm saying it is speculation. But, you know, we got a Texas race with Tallarico down there, and Congresswoman Crockett has endorsed him, but she campaigned in Michigan for the lady it was terrible, running against Syed. And I'm saying this is inside the Democratic Party, and you got the establishment Democrats, you got the progressives in there as well who want to be loyal to the party, and they don't know how to deal with this surge in this country. Now, if this were the 1930s and it was Franklin Roosevelt, they'd all be on the side of a very democratic socialist sounding president who was a child of privilege riding out of the governorship of New York. And the next thing you know, happy days are here again in the New Deal. These white boys, the white nationalists, been fighting that fight against all of this specter of making it a little bit more equitable for people to live in this society since the 1930s. They were against the New Deal. They were against the Great Society. We heard it earlier when Morgan started talking about Nixon. Their whole thing is wreck it, make as much money as you want, and damn the rest of these people. What these Democratic Socialists have tapped into, and make no mistake, they are not communists, they are not socialists, because even in New York, the hardcore DSA cats coming out and saying, Ocasio-Cortez, you ain't really socialist enough, Mamdani. So if you know the inside baseball of that ideological struggle, they're looking at those people like, when you started running for office, we started looking at you suspicious, because they are suspicious, some of them, of all electoral politics. I'm saying it's coming down to this. The Democratic Party is on the verge of giving these white nationalists another set of talking points by trying to eat these people who have some real appeal among people who are hurting. And instead of leaning into that, they trying to prop up this old ass Democratic Party that's gonna come apart like tissue paper. And then we're gonna be faced with the white nationalists. I don't know what the hell we're gonna do, because 90% of the people in the black community can't shoot.
Reese, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, because Jasmine Crockett hasn't endorsed Haley Stevens. She's in Michigan to support Bridget Brink, who's a congressional campaign. So I know that there have been some people who have, their Google AI has been given this result back that Jasmine Crockett endorsed Haley Stevens, but then the actual articles point to her endorsement of Javier Becerra. So she hasn't made an endorsement in that race. Just want to clarify that, because she gets so much hate. And I'm like, okay, at least give her hate for what she actually did. Let's not put her in the out there like she endorsed Haley Stevens when she hasn't.
Well, we are watching this race. Lots to talk about, and we'll continue to do so. But I wasn't going to go to a break, but I'm going to go ahead and right into it. I want to talk about what's happening in Virginia, where there is a gathering taking place that is specifically speaking to voters of color, specifically black men, and really looking at what is happening economically. What is happening. A new report confirmed what many of us already knew: black men and boys face persistent economic disparities in education, employment, and household wealth. The economic state of black men and boys in the United States is the inaugural annual research report published by the John Mercer Langston Institute for African American Political Leadership at Virginia State University. Dr. Wes Bellamy, the chair of political science at VSU, joins us right now. Wes, glad to have you on the show. What stood out the most for you in this report?
Well, hey, Roland, good to see you, brother, and much respect to everybody who's on the show. There's a couple of things that really stood out. When we look at the data showing how black male enrollment in post-secondary education has been going down significantly over the past 2 decades, not just at HBCUs, but at PWIs, and the lack of institutional attention that's provided to these young men is something that really stood out. When we look at 4th grade reading levels being at nearly 70 17% for African American students and specifically black males. That stood out. And then when we look at the data for unemployment for the month of June, 6.6% unemployment for African Americans, and then a 1.6 lower unemployment rate for black men during that same time period. It really shows the dire state of emergency that many black men are in. And I think that now more than ever, we have to make a conscious effort to bring forth tangible solutions and concerted efforts to be able to address this crisis with black men.
You know, on that particular point, you know, we've often talked about how, and I'm only speaking in terms of party because of how people vote, how Democratic Party has to understand, and I've been yelling this since 2012, that this thing was happening, and this feeling, this perspective when it comes to voting was happening, and so many people were ignoring this, including many black male Democrats.
Yeah. Well, the data speaks for itself. I mean, brothers are by and large being left out. And I want to be clear, like, we're not here to create a situation in which it's black men versus black women or, oh, woe is me. But the data speaks for itself. And I mean, we spent nearly a year and also talking to nearly 10,000 folks across the country and compiling data, again, from a multitude of different resources, including the National Labor Statistics, Citizens Bureau, a bunch of different trusted and verified sources. And the data all concludes the same thing. Black men are in a state of emergency, economically, educationally, and it goes to show why they're easily swayed when it comes to voting, easily swayed when it comes to being disengaged. And obviously, that's not everybody. We had our Black Male Leadership Institute today, nearly 50 young black men from across the Commonwealth of Virginia, all there. But that doesn't negate the fact that there are a multitude of us who are still feeling as if they're being left out. And the data is showing that they're not going to post-secondary education. And furthermore, they're not looking at different ways to be able to move in the upward trajectory because they're just not getting the same attention.
Questions from the panel. Greg, you go first.
Thank you. What's going on, Dr. West? How you doing, man?
What's up, OG? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Shout out to the Trojans, man. Tell our brother president that I said hello. You know,
yeah, Wes, tell that Alpha we said what's up.
No question. You already
See,
know.
I didn't start with you. I didn't start with you today. Go ahead.
See, I ain't even mean, you know, a good brother, but come on.
He can't help it.
Damn,
he can't help it.
Slipped it in. I'm sorry I set it up like that.
Right.
Sorry, Wes. Hey, man, but you know, I think about this, and obviously black men, black boys are in crisis. How do you think about, particularly now you training young minds, you there in the academic space, how do we perhaps tinker with this paradigm, the gender paradigm, so that we maybe read this data about black men and boys, not just as males, but as members of the community? Because I think about how we disaggregate data, females, males, and it's almost like these categories aren't the lived experiences of our people. So we say this is a crisis facing black men. Well, yeah, and his mother, his partner, his daughter. You know, how can we maybe approach this in a way so that it doesn't always disaggregate by gender, brother?
Well, I think that in some ways, my leader, we are going to have to look at disaggregating this by gender, because if we don't have tangible solutions dedicated specifically to black men and boys, I think that the other individuals who you named, the sisters, the mothers, the daughters, you to have to deal with the lack of progression in many ways from brothers not getting what they need emotionally, psychologically, and really educationally or financially. So in my personal estimation, what we've seen on the ground is when you have targeted programs like things such as when you have like Saturday Academy specifically dedicated to young men, or when you have specific programs dedicated to young men, instilling and providing them with dedicated supports, intentional supports, we've seen the achievements be able to be met in different ways and that are very much so different than young men who are being kind of lumped in, if you will. I think that, again, I don't know how we get away from or get around the fact that just as all of us need some special attention from time to time, our young men, and honestly, I would make the argument that many of our middle-aged and older men as well, they need dedicated, specific, targeted supports and intentional attention to be able to address some of the issues that they have. When you look at, again, a 6.6 unemployment rate for black folk and then black men being even 1.7% higher than that, that means that there is a financial problem that's going to be in that household. When you look at 17% of all of our black students reading at a fourth grade level, or reading on level at fourth grade, and black males being at nearly 12 to 13%, there's going to need to be some tangible supports that are needed there. I don't know how we get around that. Even when you look on our college campuses, I know you're at Howard, I'm at VSU, the lack of retainment for black males is just astonishing. The lack of progression for black males is absolutely abhorrent. And it's not just at HBCUs, it's at PWIs as well. So again, I don't know how we move the needle forward, if you will, without dedicated and tangible resources being dedicated to that population.
Thank you.
Avis.
Yes.
Hello there, Dr. West. I first have to start off with saying Hail State.
Hey.
All right, VSU in the house.
Hail State.
I have to, absolutely. I was really, first of all, congratulations on the report. I want to sort of point out this thing about disparities, kind of follow up on that. I was so happy to see that in your report you talked about wage gaps among black men. We often don't talk about that. Just last week, we had Black Women's Equal Pay Day.
Right.
But people don't oftentimes realize that there are wage gaps based purely on race. And your report found that black men make 77 cents to the dollar as compared to their white male counterparts. Can you talk a little bit more about how black men fare when it comes to wages and what needs to be done to make sure that they get paid more? A lot of the challenges that we're facing, I would argue, is because black men just aren't making the money that they should be making.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic point. I see it in my work with young men essentially every day. The psychological impact that plays on brothers when they don't feel as if they're able to take care of their families, when they don't feel as if they're being able to make enough money to be able to support their children the way in which they want to, maybe be able to take their lady out on a date, maybe be able to get fresh to make themselves feel a little bit better about what's going on in their lives. It definitely plays a significant toll. And when you look at, again, black men making 77 cents for every $1 that white men make, the same way we have black women's equal pay day, I think we have to be targeted in terms of talking to brothers about the same thing. Where I think it becomes a little bit troubling is that for some of us, it feels somewhat taboo to talk about the issues that black men are having from an equal pay perspective, because obviously we know it's not at the same rate as it is with the sisters. And I firmly believe we got to get away from always comparing the two. It's not you versus I. It's not black men versus black women. We both are having very, very difficult times, and these systems are working exactly how they are designed to. So for that matter, again, raising awareness about the lack of equal play for black men is important, but then also targeted programs for job, employment, and advancement. When we look at some of these trade programs that need to be targeting brothers, when we look at educational programs and educational attainment and advancement programs, we need to have targeted programs for our brothers. There's a multitude of things in which we can do in that regard that we believe can help raise wages for brothers. But again, they have to be targeted. We can't pretend as if it's just not happening anymore.
Reese.
Dr. Bellamy, so good to see you. I remember some months back, maybe even a year back. Good, thank you. I got into an exchange with a black man who took offense at discussions about black male unemployment and the kinds of issues that you've raised in this report that are very real that need to be addressed. How do we get to addressing them and moving past the resistance to people who feel like pointing out these disparities, pointing out the state of black men, and obviously some people are doing better than others, without there being that defensiveness, without this turning into the gender wars or to all the kind of wars that we fight against each other instead of uniting?
Well, I'm not going to pretend as if a lot of brothers aren't sensitive. And I'm not going to pretend as if a lot of brothers don't have battered egos. Maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but far too many. And when we begin to talk about the disparities and the issues that are indeed happening, some brothers feel as if they're being attacked. So I think brothers, it's incumbent for brothers to have conversations and discussions with brothers to really provide them with the facts and let them know that this is indeed going on. This is happening around us, and it's not necessarily the sister's fault. To your point, we have to be able to avoid the gender wars. And I think that's why it's also incumbent for brothers like Roland, brothers like Dr. Carr, two OGs in the game to continue talking about this. When we have our own conversations, when we have our group chats with brothers, be able to allow brothers to emote, but also educate them on what's truly happening, what the data is truly speaking, and then help find targeted ways for us to get out of said funk. I think the brothers also have to recognize just because one or two be doing well, that doesn't mean that everybody is getting their equal pay. And because of that, we have an obligation to continue to work towards finding better for all. And that's going to require us having, again, targeted and very much so measured programs and intentionality with how we address these issues.
And I'll just get a perfect example. I can tell you countless times, Wes, in the past 2 or 3 months, when I have been at events or I've been in conversation with people, and they bring up the black female job losses under Trump, and I'm sitting there going, there's a lot of brothers lost their job too. To your point, it's not about comparison. It's just stating the actual fact. And in fact, I sent a group I'm in. I said, hey, what question would y'all like to ask to El-Sayed? And literally, a sister said, ask him about the million black women who've lost their jobs. Now, when I asked the question, I asked about black men and black women. But we need to understand that, listen, you can't talk about this economy and only speak of black women who've lost their jobs when the black unemployment for black women and black men both have gone up.
Yeah, so Roland, to that point, within the study, it's not one of the items that we have on the social graphics, but when you read the study, you'll see nearly 650,000 black men have lost their jobs over the last year. I mean, that's an astronomical number. Obviously, it's not a million, but that doesn't mean that number isn't to be discussed and taken very seriously. I mean, it is a crisis on both ends, and we have to be very intentional to not allow the bots and the fake social media profiles and the misinformation to make us fight against each other. It's a crisis on all fronts, and it's one in which we have to address deliberately.
Absolutely. Folks, so if you go to, first of all, they have a QR code. Do y'all have it? Do y'all have where they can actually access the report? If you don't, I will show it on the screen. But while I'm doing that, do this here. Wes, to your point, why this matters, this is why we're launching next month this new show with Jeff Johnson. Here's a promo.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Why do so many people seem to think they know black men so well? What they think we want, what they think we need. Hell, they even tried to tell us why and how we voted, but never had a conversation with us. Never asked us how we felt, what brings us joy, what makes us angry, what makes us scared. How do we live? That's what this show is about. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. We can speak for ourselves. This will be a show where we bring brothers on that you don't see on every other talk show. Nope. Brothers that are doing work in local communities with black men for black communities. We're going to hear each other and try to understand so perhaps we can move forward together. No translation, because we don't need anybody speaking for us. Nope. What we need is each other. No translation, right here on the Black Star Network. Check it out.
And Wes, this is why a conversation like that matters.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Salute to you, Roland. Much respect. You're all right for Alpha.
Huh? Say it again?
I said, I ain't saying it again. I said, you're all right for an Alpha. That's how I'm going to say that.
Y'all, it's the Economic State of Black Men and Boys, the 2026 annual report. Go to my iPad. You see it right here. And if you're watching, come on, go to my iPad. Thank you. Let's go. Thank you very much. This is the QR code right here to download the report. So this is where you can download the report right here. Wes, we appreciate it, Doc. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. Will do, man. Thanks you, brother.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, got to go to a quick break. We come back. My interview with one of the top candidates running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Be sure to support the work that we do. Join our Brina Funk fan club. You want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. It's also for credit cards. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com to figure out ways to donate. Check some money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Back in a moment. All right, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare, so she called Chapter, a Medicare advisory company, and she texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing, and now she understands better what's going on. But it's not just her. A woman in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. So what does she do? She called Chapter. They found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds of dollars less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from our community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Yet Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you. No games. And people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100 a year. All it takes is 20 minutes. You talk to a real person, and it's completely free help. So call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. That's Chapter.
This is Tamala Mann.
And this is David Mann. And you're watching Roland Martin
Unfiltered.
Democrats desperately want to retake the Senate from Republicans, but one of the places they must hold on to is a U.S. Senate seat in Michigan. There's a Democrat that's retiring there, Debbie Stabenow, and so voters go to the polls on Tuesday to elect the Democratic representative for that state, plus other races as well. Well, in the U.S. Senate race, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is running against Congresswoman Haley Stevens. They're vying for that Democratic nomination to be on the ballot in November. Earlier today, I talked to El-Sayed about the campaign and why he thinks he's the best person to represent Michigan in the United States Senate. Dr. El-Sayed, a huge primary coming up, and black voters are going to be critical. What is your specific message to African Americans in Michigan as to why you should be their choice to represent them in the United States Senate?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'll say it's because I've been showing up for the community since I started in public service. I rebuilt Detroit's health department after it had been shut down when the city went through bankruptcy and state takeover. In that work, we did things like guarantee every child a free pair of glasses delivered at school within 2 weeks of a vision test, took on some of the biggest corporate polluters in our state, had every school, daycare, and Head Start tested for lead in the water after the Flint water crisis. We've shown up as Wayne County Health Director to do things like put air quality monitors all over Wayne County, provide free health insurance for new small businesses, and eliminate upwards of $700 million of medical debt over the next several years. So I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to do, but I'll also tell you this, I understand what it means to show up and to work alongside and behind key leaders in the community, endorsed by folks like State Representative Cynthia Neely and Mayor Sheldon Neely in Flint, Wayne County Executive Warren Evans, Commissioner Martha Scott, the Council of Baptist Pastors of Detroit and vicinity, and the Black Slate. And so I hope that I can earn folks' support because I've been showing up with and for the community for a long time.
Now, I am not one to spend lots of time on polling, yet a new poll dropped showing you with a 15-point lead against Haley Stevens. Yet other polling shows that if it was a head-to-head with you and Mike Rogers, the Republican would beat you. What do you say to those Democrats who say that if you are the nominee, then that will guarantee that Democrats do not hold that Senate seat in Michigan, and that will be aiding Donald Trump?
Well, Roland, I'll tell you a couple things. First, the polling averages show that I'm the best opponent against Mike Rogers to beat him in the fall. But then you only have to take my word for it or the polling word for it. Folks saw the debates. Ask yourself who you want standing against him on the debate stage in the fall. And then bigger picture, let's step back and ask why we lost in 2024. Too often we lost young people. We lost Arab and Muslim voters. I'm an Egyptian American. I'm a proud son of Africa, and I'm also proudly Arab and Muslim American. I think we have an opportunity to bring communities together to bring back the voters that too often we lost, to win the future for our state, take back our state from Donald Trump. But then beyond that, right? Think about who I'm going to run against. Mike Rogers is a guy who's never seen a corporate check he doesn't like. I'm the only candidate who's never taken a dime from a corporation to run a campaign. He helped to architect the opioid epidemic. I'm the guy who showed up to put Narcan in vending machines for free. A doctor who eliminated medical debt against a guy who took money from the pharmaceutical industry to vote to raise prescription drug prices, and then moved to Florida, made $14 million that he can't really account for. So head to head, I am the best candidate to take him on. And then on top of that, I'm up against $60 million of outside spending. A lot of that spending is also spending for Mike Rogers, whether it's DTE or Blue Cross or it's Big Pharma or Big Tech or APAC. They don't care which of my opponents wins, whether it's the Democrat or the Republican, because they're funding them both. And when they win, we all lose because we have to pay the difference. So if an election is an exercise in contrasts, then I offer the best contrast. He is a guy who architected the opioid epidemic. I'm a guy who responded to try and save lives. He's a guy who takes corporate money to do the worst things. I'm the guy who's reject corporate money to make sure that we can show up and do the best things. He's a guy who is a bootlicker for Donald Trump. I'm a guy who's been opposed to Donald Trump for the longest. So I feel really good about being able to beat him.
I'm sitting here looking at a piece by Jonathan Chait in The Atlantic, and this was the headline. Abdul El-Sayed fuses together two toxic ideologies. He said the Michigan candidate for U.S. Senate has a profound weakness for conspiracyism, or conspiracy racism, however you want to frame it. And what's interesting in reading this, he's highly critical of your position when it comes to Israel. Yet when you look at polling data, it shows that how Americans feel about Israel has completely changed, especially among Democrats. You got Senator John Fetterman, who says that the Democratic Party abandons Israel. He's leaving the Democratic Party. And I contrast that with how voters responded to Vice President Kamala Harris. What do you see as the reason why this shift has happened, and how do you think that's going to help you turn out voters on Tuesday?
Yeah. Well, Roland, I'll tell you, this is not a conspiracy that they've spent $30 million to beat me. $30 million, single biggest spender in this race. They've set a record on the amount of money that they spent against anyone against me. That's above and beyond all of the other money. $60 million. That's also a record in the total amount of money spent against a single Democratic Senate primary candidate. Now, the thing about money is that it might be cynical, but it's not dumb. They know what they're fighting against. And they're fighting against me because I want to keep your tax dollars here. My opponent just voted 2 weeks ago to send $3.3 billion of your tax dollars to a foreign government to buy bombs and tanks that drop on other people and their kids. I just want to ask you, take a look at your kid's school and ask yourself whether or not that money should be spent dropping bombs on other kids' schools or investing in yours. And that's not because I hate anyone. That's because I love everyone. And I don't believe, whatever you think about the state of Israel, I don't believe they have a right to our tax dollars. I believe we have a right to our tax dollars. And that shouldn't be a crazy thing to say. And I believe in equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination for all people. And right now, you've got a government that's aiding, arming, and abetting a foreign government doing the worst things in opposition to the possibility of a two-state solution while saying we want a two-state solution. That to me is just hypocrisy. So I'm just saying that I want to make sure that kids have the things that they need and deserve here. They need to be able to walk competent sidewalks and go to good schools and get the health care that they need when they need it. I don't know what's radical about that, but for so long we've been doing the radical thing because of the power of large special interests like AIPAC of sending our tax dollars to a foreign government to do terrible things while kids in communities like ours go without good things.
I'm going to read you another headline. This is from CNN by Eric Bradner, David Wright. Black voters may decide the nation's biggest Democratic primary. Many are clearly against the more progressive option. There have been Black Democrats, Congressman Jim Clyburn and others, who have endorsed your opponent, who have raised concerns about the lack of African Americans, they say, at your rallies and events like this. Do you buy into this notion that there is a race schism here? And when you talk about your outreach to Black voters, what are you specifically saying to them? And where do you think, when you look at this reporting, where this narrative is coming from, that that Black voters are absolutely scared of you as their Senate candidate?
Well, Roland, $60 million would do that. When you drop $60 million in ads, I just want you to feel like what it feels here in Michigan. If you turn on the television and there's a commercial break, you're going to get two ads, one against me and one for my opponent, all paid for by AIPAC or some other corporate PAC. And those ads are going to flash a headline from a speech or a moment from a speech given in 2018 by President Obama to make you think that President Obama has endorsed my opponent, which has not happened. Or they're going to take the fact that I wrote an op-ed in 2015 about the Let's Move campaign, which was brought to us by the First Lady, Michelle Obama, saying that it was a good program, but there are some things about it that could have been more effective, to say that somehow I'm disrespectful. But those are the kinds of lies that get told when you're willing to take money from the worst actors in our politics and spend them to the tune of $60 million. So it's really hard to understand what folks outside of that spending would be thinking about. But I know that they're working really hard to manufacture that kind of a narrative, and they are using a lot of money to try and do it. And yet and still, I'll go back to where you started, which is that we're up in this race by 15 points. And so you're seeing more and more, I hate to say it, just flailing on the part of AIPAC and all those folks who have spent all that money, trying to do whatever they can to rescue the money that they've already spent to try and pick their next U.S. Senator, rather than allowing the people of Michigan to pick our next U.S. Senator. My outreach among the Black community has been based on the 10 years of service that I've been doing in and among Black communities in our state. And it's based in the fact that some of the most trusted Black leaders in Michigan have endorsed me in this race, whether it's the Wayne County Executive Warren Evans, with whom I worked to be able to deliver a lot of the good things that we've done in Wayne County, or its Commissioner Martha G. Scott, who's been an elected official since 1972 in Highland Park, Hamtramck in Detroit, or it's the Neelys, both State Representative Neely and Mayor Neely out of Flint, or it's key leaders in communities like Saginaw and Muskegon and Benton Harbor. So, those folks trust my work. But again, it's very difficult to communicate past $60 million of lies being spread around you on TV, because you want to keep your tax dollars to do good things for people here rather than send it to a foreign government. And it's the cynicism of our politics, unfortunately, that too often gets in the way and shapes too much of our public opinion. So we're going to keep pushing. All of my work has been about racial equity in health, and I'm going to continue to fight for that when I'm in the U.S. Senate. And so I'm going to keep making my case. I'm grateful for the support we have earned in the Black community. And there's always more work to do to keep talking about what you can do to address the challenges that too often fall hardest on Black folks in our state.
I think about Zoran Mamdani's race. The primary he was facing several African-American candidates. And so there was criticism that he was not really reaching out to Black voters. And what ended up happening was he had young but progressive, but young folks who were driving that. Older Black voters went for other candidates. He wins the primary, and then he brings that coalition together, then goes on to victory. When you look at Michigan, when you've had very progressive candidates versus a more moderate candidate, typically Black voters, and we all know that voters 65 and older vote higher than anybody else, will typically choose that moderate candidate. Do you sort of see your campaign similar to the Mamdani primary in terms of how you have to win the primary and then pivot to put together a broader coalition? Because at the end of the day, you got to win. You can get, and so you can sit here and appeal to this group or that group, but you got to put together enough people to actually win the primary, and then obviously shift to a different strategy, a broader strategy, in turn to win the general election.
Well, Roland, look, I've got three simple goals. I want to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all. All three of those things would benefit all Michiganders, but in particular, communities that have too often, because of marginalization, because of racism, been left behind when it comes to economic development, when it comes to the quality of schools and investment in schools, when it comes to healthcare. And those are issues that I've been working on for the better part of 10 years. In some respects, my challenge is actually a lot easier than his was. Michigan is not New York, and I'm not him. I've been doing this work in and among the Black community for a decade. I can point to the work that I've done. I can point to the relationships I've had. And never mind what $60 million in lies will say about me, I know that I can point to the relationships that I've built. And more importantly, the folks on the other side of those relationships can point to me and say, I've been seeing him doing this work for a very, very long time. When he tells you he's committed to the well-being of our communities, here's what that shows up as. It shows up on glasses, on kids' faces. It shows up as polluters who have been stood up to, who aren't polluting in the same way that they used to. It shows up in schools that are not leaded. It shows up in letters that are medical debt elimination letters. So I'm going to keep talking about my work, keep building this movement and healing the divides that unfortunately people who are telling lies have tried to create. But there's never a world where you can ever stop reaching out to communities. And, I want folks to know that I am committed to being able to build this movement, whatever the lies they've said about me, whatever the money they've spent against me, because I'm deeply committed to the well-being of all people in Michigan, and in particular recognize a deep responsibility to uplift and empower Black communities who've too often been left behind. And as someone who served the city of Detroit, who served Wayne County, that commitment's written in the work that I've done. And so it's a much easier story to tell.
So much talk about Democratic Socialists of America. And I mean, national media has been going crazy with it. Do you identify with DSA, or do you simply say you're a Democrat and there are no other labels?
Exactly. I'm a scientist, not a socialist. And, I did a PhD in public health, went to medical school, and maybe it's just my training, but I just want to see evidence. So I don't do ideology. I'm not committed to the writings of somebody who died 100 years ago. I'm committed to solutions for people who are alive right now. And that's been my work all along. So while I fight for Medicare for all, it's not out of an ideology. It's because I think it's a really good solution to fixing our healthcare challenges in this country. Why, as somebody who believes in capitalism is a great way to build and scale small businesses, I also understand that the biggest risk to capitalism isn't government regulation. It was always monopoly. And Roland, we all know that no matter what market we're a part of, you got to go and buy a ticket to go see your grandma, or you just want to call grandma, you only got a couple of options, right? Chances are you've got a cell phone in your pocket made by one of two companies, right? It's got one of three carriers. If you want to go buy a flight, there's one of three options, three airlines, and they all fly one of two planes. All right, you decide, what, I'm not going to call grandma or see grandma. I'm going to just go shopping and try and make myself a decent meal. You got one of two options or three options. Chances are, if you're living in an urban community, you got no options, all as a function of the fact that there are too many big monopolies when it comes to our ability to actually shop or buy the things that we need in our society. So I just believe that we need capitalism that actually works, which means that you need some government to step in and say, hey, no, you can't just buy up all the other options and squeeze people when it comes to their earnings at work, and then squeeze people again when it comes to how much they got to pay for your goods. So I don't identify as a socialist. I'm a scientist, and I just want society to be working better for people.
I have been laying out since Trump's inauguration that there's a clear, undeniable GOP war on Black America. We have seen the attacks in public policy. We've seen the attacks budget. We see what the grossly unqualified Pete Hegseth is doing to deny Black people promotions in the United States military. We've seen more than 1 million Black women and men lose their jobs. Black unemployment skyrocketed. What will you do to confront the racist agenda against Black people, but specifically fighting for the economic opportunities for Black folks in Michigan?
So, the other one you didn't mention was just the attack on voting rights by the Supreme Court, by Supreme Court justices he helped to install. So I know that it all starts with the power to vote and the freedom to vote and representation in Congress. And so I think we need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And then when it comes to economic development, too often the way that we think about economies is by passing a gigantic tax subsidy for a large corporation that promises to bring 200 or 500 jobs. Those jobs never really materialize. And if they do, they're working extra hard to figure out how to offshore or automate them immediately. So instead of that vision for economic development, what I'm more focused on is how do you empower the incredible human capital that sits in our communities by offering access to revolving capital loan funds so folks can take out a low or zero interest loan to build a great business, that they can employ people in the local community. They can keep that money flowing in the community as consumers and build small business oriented economies. And then when it comes to fighting for working people, too often we allow those corporations to punish workers, lay them off at will, allow them to spend their money to artificially inflate their stock prices through stock buybacks rather than investing in their workers and their wages and benefits. So I stand with unions. I'm proud to be endorsed by the American Federation of Teachers and the National Nurses United, and of course, the great UAW here in Michigan, who've been fighting for economic justice for a very long time. And so when it comes to standing with unions and working people, we need to pass the PRO Act to normalize union organizing in every sector of American life. So no matter who you are, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a worker, that you are going to know that the government is invested in capacity. And then finally, we've got to remember that too often when it comes to the communities that are denied access to resources or even union representation, too often it's the Black community. So we've got to be thinking about how is it that we're invested in the means of a good economy like good schools. Detroit Public Schools alone, they just had $700 million investment into the quality of the school buildings, but that still leaves them, $1.7 million behind. So instead of sending our money abroad to do the worst things, I want to be invested in good schools and infrastructure that are the baseline of a good economy. Because if you've got a great education, you get to go to an amazing school, the opportunities that you have coming out of that are so much vaster. And too often we allow the redlining of the past to pattern good access to good schools in the future because we're still funding our education via property tax, which is a function of property value, which of course is a function of historical racism. So I think we've got to rethink a lot of the ways that we invest. We've got to invest more, and we've got to make sure we're unlocking the amazing talents in the community rather than giving big tax cuts to big corporations expecting that they're going to save us.
You've had so many voters. We've said so many voters have checked out of the process. When you look at the data, I've had numerous posters on talking about young Black voters, young voters, period, voters between 18 and 35, really 18 and 44, who have checked out, who are turned off by the process. How do you reach them? What do you say to them, those individuals who believe that government cannot impact their lives, even though there's not a single person in this country who is not impacted by government, whether it is federal, state, county, city, school board?
Yeah. First, I understand. I get it. I understand why you're frustrated. I get it why for you, it feels like you're only ever trying to stop things from getting heinously worse. And rather than just speak to young people, we center young people in this campaign, both in the movement that we're building, the 10,000 people knocking nearly 10,000 doors a day, but also in the policy that we are so serious about passing. You know, the hard part about it is whether it's a Democrat or Republican, too often they're bought off by the same companies. DTE, our local utility that's raised our rates faster than in 46 other states over the last 20 years, or Blue Cross Blue Shield that raised our premiums 15% last year alone, or it's big tech that wants to automate out your job and put a data center in your backyard, or big pharma that wants to keep the medication away from you that your tax dollars paid for innovating. All of them are buying both Democratic campaigns and Republican campaigns. So I get why you're frustrated and you feel like it's all futile anyway. Now, Donald Trump is heinous and awful, but at the same time, we've got to offer you something that you could fight for. And that's exactly this campaign. Now, we mentioned where Black voters might go in this race. And I can tell you this, whether you are Black or brown or white, if you're under the age of 50, chances are you're probably voting for this campaign. That's what the numbers continue to show. And so if we want a government that works for our future and that the future wants to be invested in, this campaign is offering a way forward that buys us out of the bipartisan consensus on too many of the issues, or worse, the bipartisan corruption in which we watch the biggest corporations and special interests buy campaigns on both sides. And so I think that's why we're resonating so clearly with young people.
Many white male Democratic strategists want to spend so much time and energy trying to go back and reclaim those Reagan Democrats. They are fixated on white women in the suburbs. I've made the point that you put your money, time, and energy in the places where those are your natural constituencies. I've also made clear that if black folks are the base of your party, where there are significant black voters, the Democrats today are going to have to spend 4 times as much time, 4 times as much money on black voters, because the old model is gone. The old model of simply going to black churches in October, visiting an NAACP dinner, dropping by an Urban League event, and that's no shade on the groups, but that's really what the old strategy was. What the old strategy was. Do you believe that that's what Democrats have to do now? That is, they have to make massive investments on the ground and talking to black voters far earlier than they normally do. And I dare say a 6-9 month runway or 12-month runway versus, oh, you know, we'll get around to them in the second half of September, in October, and that last Sunday before Election Day.
Roland, I think you're absolutely right. And we've been having that conversation with black voters for 15 months now. I will tell you this, though. We got to go even further back. I think too often we show up and politicians tell you that they're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then they never show up again, and then X, Y, and Z doesn't happen. And the reason X, Y, and Z doesn't happen is because that campaign was bought to you by the very people, right? Bought and paid for by the very people who are on the wrong side of X, Y, and Z happening. If you say we're going to reduce your healthcare costs, but you're taking money from the people who want to expand healthcare costs, big pharma, big insurance, the hospital chains, then don't be surprised when that doesn't actually materialize. So I think it actually goes back further to say, you actually got to put up or shut up. You actually got to show up and do the things you say you're going to do. And the only way you do that is if you offer a politics that is not bought by all the same people who are on the wrong side of the problem in the first place. But that takes time, and it takes resources, and it takes effort. What I'm hoping to be able to do, as we talked about, is win this primary and then run the best campaign Michigan has seen for the next 3 months, defeat Mike Rogers, but then spend the next 6 years in the U.S. Senate doing the things I said I was going to do. And then the next time I come back around, and it's not just going to be during Election Day, it's going to be to check in on the things that folks are telling me about, to understand what more could be done. But it's that ability to deliver, not just during Election Day, not just to mobilize voters, but to actually show the goods of what you delivered. Because at the end of the day, if you've been lied to enough times, you're going to stay home. You look at the voter turnout numbers in a community like the city of Detroit, you're talking about the teens. And we can't continue forward in a democracy when people don't show up because they've basically been taught that at the end of the day, it might not matter anyway. And you and I both know that that's not true. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to show the good stuff you can deliver to. And so it has to be a round the clock, every part of the year kind of process, continuing in a call-in response with the community about what folks need and what you can offer, so that come Election Day, folks are already mobilized because they know exactly who you are, what you've been doing. You've been narrating circumstances in the first place, and you're delivering. And that's the kind of work that I did when I was both Detroit Health Director and Wayne County Health Director. I used to go out to show up, I'd interview folks just to understand what their issues were, and then we'd build programs around what they shared, and we'd go back and take those back. I think we need to bring that back to elected office as well. These seats aren't just for the holding, they're for the using. And if people don't see us using them on their behalf, then don't be surprised when they don't help you hold them.
Dr. El-Sayed, I appreciate it. Good luck on Tuesday's primary.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate you.
All right, folks. Greg, Avis, Reese had to go. Avis, I'll start with you. Your thoughts?
Well, I think he really gave us some very, very a good understanding of who he is. I think a lot of folks were wondering about that Democratic Socialist question. I think it was very impressive to say, hey, I'm a scientist and I am looking for facts. I also am impressed with the fact that he has shared about the key issues that are most important to him. Issues around health, issues around making sure that people actually have access to a better opportunity in their communities, and his departure from, having the ties to a lot of the big money interest that oftentimes slow things up instead of making sure that we move forward powerfully. And so I think he made a good closing argument to the Black community. I know there are probably some questions that people may have had that he didn't get to, but I do think that he made a good impression here. I don't think there are any huge disqualifiers here, and I think he provides a good option for voters come Election Day.
Greg?
I agree with Dr. Avis. I think that if you blindfolded people and you took the sound away and you just read the platforms, this wouldn't be a competition. By the polls, it doesn't seem like it's competition anyway. Hey, Stevens is not the best candidate in this race. It's clearly Dr. El-Sayed, and I think that, the Wall Street Journal did an article a couple of days ago about the DSA, and they're saying, it's 120,000 of them who are former members. About half of them have joined since 2024. And, the Democratic National Committee is in a tizzy. But then there are folks like former Vice President Kamala Harris who reached out to Mamdani, who are trying to gauge, where this is. I think it's beautiful. Now, the Wall Street Journal, of course, a white nationalist paper, is saying that, to the Democrats, Democratic Socialists are like the Tea Party was to the Republican Party. Well, one can only hope. Because I remember that the Tea Party drew out the true nature of the Republican Party, the white nationalist party. Maybe the Democratic Socialists can do the same thing. And I agree with what you said, Dr. Davis, when you said that, when he said to you, Roland, I'm a scientist. And he took a little swipe there at Karl Marx, although maybe it was Gramsci and not Marx, because he did say 100 years ago and not 200, so 150. So, but either way, he's articulate, and by articulate, I don't mean like what Joe Biden called Barack Obama. I mean, he's able to voice real world issues and frame them in a way that is very easily digested. He's going to have to deal with ignorance all around in the state of Michigan. Whether it be racial ignorance, ethnic ignorance. I'm thinking, of course, about Arab communities there. It was interesting how he adopted that line. I don't want to say that he stole the line from Mamdani or that he adopted the line from Mamdani, but he said, I'm a son of Africa. That's what Mamdani, born in Uganda, of course, has said, but he didn't claim to be black. That's very important. And being a Muslim in Michigan, listen, the birthplace of the Nation of Islam, the Ahmadiyya movement, I think he's articulating his faith in a way that doesn't overshadow anything else, doesn't subsume or capsize the campaign, but does resonate among those who are willing and able to hear past the propaganda. Finally, I think maybe it's since we've been on the air, the New York Times just dropped a story that this damn racist Musk is now saying he's going to drop $100 million in campaigns. Hopefully that he will drop as much money as he wants, and it will have the same effect as it had in Wisconsin when he tried to buy the Supreme Court in Wisconsin and took that L. But what is clear is that if these folk can make not only those policy connections, but also make this about the people versus the oligarchs versus the money as people are suffering, every dollar these Republicans raise may end up being a fiery rope around their neck, because people are going to say, we got to fight this money with our votes. I think it's a very interesting time we're at right now.
Avis, I also believe there is a lesson here for all of the black folks who are always yelling and screaming, we need our own party. I've consistently said, you don't know what the hell you're talking about if you do not understand the realities in this country of a two-party system. So what DSA is showing you is how you can work within an existing system and run your type of candidates that can win. It is no different, and Greg is right, the Tea Party was never a separate entity. Right. The Tea Party were actually conservatives. Some of them could have been former Democrats, could have been independents, who spoke to specific issues, but more importantly, what they did was they brought a certain level of energy that attracted people who were not engaged in politics. Mm-hmm. So if you want to understand, so even though El-Sayed, and I'm not calling him DSA, if you look at the candidates that are running, right, the DSA candidates that have won, they are bringing a certain level of energy, and they are hyper-focused on specific issues that are appealing to people who have been turned off by the middle of the road. No, we really can't accomplish that. No, we have to wait. And so this is what folks should be paying attention to when they yell, we need our own party. They're showing you how you can be within a particular system, run your candidates, and win.
Absolutely, because they're able to take advantage of the pre-existing infrastructure within the two-party system, and in this case, specifically within the Democratic Party, in order to have a more scalable entree to electoral politics in a way that can make winning real and not just a symbolic vote. But I want to harken back to something that you said towards the beginning, that the Democratic Party would be smart to learn in this moment. You know, I'm getting a good kick out of how many of, the more moderate Democrats are clutching their pearls right now instead of sitting down someplace and taking some notes. If they really want to understand what has led to this huge rise in the success of many DSA candidates and candidates who are very progressive, even if they don't specifically align with DSA specifically, as Dr. El-Sayed has mentioned, is that people in this moment are looking for fighters. The bottom line is Black people in particular, but large swaths of this country, in addition to Black people, have been under relentless attacks by this administration ever since the very first day he sat his ass in office. And we have been taking hit after hit after hit after hit. And as a result, people are really flailing right now economically and in other respects as well. And all of this time, we are watching the Republicans on full attack mode and the Democrats not showing the sense of urgency, not showing the fight, not showing the type of energy that is needed to counteract the blows that have been coming our ways relentlessly under this administration. I think what people are really seeing in the Democratic Socialist is not necessarily the fact that they call themselves Democratic Socialist. I think what they are seeing are fighters. I think that they are seeing people that are articulating what is really hurting, where the pain is in their life, and are articulating specific solutions for those pain points. It's interesting that right now, everyone is talking about this term affordability. I would argue that you really didn't hear that very much on the political scene until we were watching the Mamdani campaign rise. I mean, he really articulated that in a very powerful and persuasive way. And now you have both mainstream Democrats and Republicans trying to get Trump to talk about affordability. And so what's really needed in this moment is a counter for the right wing that understands the urgency of this moment and is willing and able to fight for people at a time in which, in many respects, they feel as if they've been left defenseless. That, to me, is something that any Democrats that want to win right now, they need to be taking notes instead of sitting here trying to figure out, oh my God, how can I distance myself from that? Maybe you need to figure out how can you learn from that. And if you did, you might be a little bit more successful at the ballot box.
Not only that, y'all, roll the clip. I found this of a 19-year-old Black man who spoke about why he was supporting El-Sayed over Haley Stevens.
Why I don't like Haley Stevens? Easy. She's like too much of a corporate and Israel shill. Like one of her most famous quotes is that Israel comes to her in her dreams. Fuck that. I'm so sick of America bending the knee and getting on its knees for Israel, and Haley Stevens doesn't really seem to be against that. Abdul El-Sayed doesn't take any corporate funding. He just has endorsements from the UAW and Bernie Sanders. Haley Stevens is basically being groomed to be in the Senate to make more favorable changes for Israel, and I'm not okay with that. I already don't like indirectly supporting a genocide just by collecting a paycheck or by buying literally anything in the country, because I know it's all going to eventually go upwards and then outwards to Israel. And if I can say that my own state's responsible for that, I feel deeply ashamed. So I'm just going to vote for the guy that's not doing that.
Where did you vote for Abdul?
Somebody different.
Somebody different.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Instead of going with yeah, we need changes and shit, you know what I mean? Fuck it.
So, Greg, the reason the Israel question, and I need people listening and watching to pay attention to what I'm about to say. If you look at the Israel issue, it is amazing how the funding of Israel is actually galvanizing voters in both parties. Mm-hmm. You have Democratic or Democratic-leaning voters who condemn Israel for committing genocide. And even though you have a lot of Democrats who don't want to call it genocide, many folks who are voting call it genocide. On the Republican side, you have many Republicans. Charlie Kirk was one of the folks who was out there making noises too, which is why the conspiracy theorists believe that Israel killed him. If you look at all their videos about the microphone exploding, as opposed to him being shot. Many of these Republicans are against foreign aid being spent elsewhere. So when you hear Senator John Fetterman say, oh, the Democratic Party stops its rock-solid support of Israel, I'm leaving the party. Okay, but the reality is the sentiment of the voters is shifting dramatically, and the candidates that are speaking into that sentiment, you're seeing success at the ballot box. That's actually called listening to the people, or listening to the ground, or as Joe Madison would say, put it where the ghost can get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And please forgive me for laughing so hard, because my man at the end was like, fuck it. In other words, anytime a guy says something like that and is going to the polls, you're absolutely right, Dr. Davis. The Democratic Party needs to be paying attention. This is a guy who maybe didn't vote. I remember when Barack Obama ran and I had to come down here. I was still living in Philly at the time. And I went to the polls at 4 o'clock in the morning so I could get in line. And there were two sisters in front of me, elders in lawn chairs. And then behind me, a brother came up. And this brother said, I ain't voted for nothing since Wilson Goode, the first black mayor. I said, hey, bro, get in front of me. Because, I got to catch a train as soon as I do this. But I want you in front of me because you ain't walked in a voting booth in forever. That elder, the brother who spoke second, he's expressing that idea. Okay, we need a change. But a lot of times when people say we need a change, they don't vote. And, Roland, is very important what you raised. Steve Phillips, who, of course, as you know, we interviewed him for the Black Table. He's got a new book out called Are White Men Smarter Than Everybody Else? It's kind of provocative title. But what he says in there, and he actually wrote an article in the Nation magazine back in November, where he said, to understand what Mamdani is doing now, Democratic Socialists, you got to go back 40 years. What? The Rainbow Coalition. People say, we need our own party. How many times have you talked about this? 1972, Gary, Black political party, went to the Democratic Convention and the Republican Convention 4 years before, then 72, Gary. The whole idea was we got to capture one of these two parties. Having a party doesn't mean you have a complete major political party to the exclusion of the others. It means that you use those hosts. You've talked about this many times. Well, what happened with the Rainbow Coalition, which was the name itself, of course, taken from the Black Panthers and the Young Lords and the Young Patriots, the whites in Chicago, Fred Hampton and others. And by the way, rest in peace to Delise Oliver, who just made transition, one of the leading figures in the Young Lords. Well, what did the Democratic Party do then? Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, they come up, the so-called centrists come up with a way to absorb some of that energy, try to incorporate some of it, but blunt that force. Well, guess what? It's back again, baby. Why? Because the people in this country are not a minority who do not want to bow down to a duopoly, to a kind of a neoliberal political agenda. And what looked crazy in 2024, when that first brother, if he's 19, that means he probably couldn't have voted for Vice President Harris. He may not have been old enough to vote for. He was just barely old enough. Now here we are, just a couple of years later, and these oligarchs are playing in our faces so boldly that they are basically saying, we dare you to take us out in the ballot box. And then BB, the international killer, who is a war criminal, who has so much blood on his hands. Imagine this. Imagine us having this conversation, Roland, 2 years ago. No, but guess what? It's different now. BB is still killing. They didn't kill somebody since we've been on the air right now. Bombing and killing and bombing and killing. And as a result, this is where I end. Black folk in particular, we have been victims for a half millennia, for 500 years of a perpetual assault on our lives. If and when our focus, our aperture widens, and it has done this over time in history, we see at different moments in U.S. history, but I seem like we're at a moment now where you can't use that as a wedge issue. Well, Palestinians, what about us? Nah. Genocide is genocide, and these people are in bed with them, and they all got all this money, and you don't have anything. Listen, they may crack this thing wide open, but it is an iteration in some ways of what the Rainbow Coalition was doing. So when people say we need our own party, maybe you can convince them to read a book, Roland, because I don't seem to be doing too good a job at that.
I also want people to really, when you say read, please read and understand the ramifications of what happens with how our politics turns out. And what I'm speaking about is I think about 1944. I think about a certain presidential campaign in 1944. Many of us might remember the famous, holding up of, the headline, Dewey defeats Truman. We might remember Dewey defeats Truman. But I think it's important for people to actually go back to the previous. Go to my iPad, show the photo, y'all. Come on. Y'all moving too slow. Come on, you're moving too slow. Need you to keep up with me. I need you to go back to the previous election when Henry Wallace ran. Mm-hmm. People need to understand that Henry Wallace was head of the Progressive Party. And if you look at the issues he was advocating, he was talking about universal health care in 1944. He was FDR's vice president. But leaders of the Democratic Party felt Wallace was too liberal. He was too progressive. So what the Democratic Party has always struggled with, what you just laid out, they always struggle with progressive and center-right, or what is called moderate. So Wallace gets removed in 44, replaced with Harry Truman. Truman, the only reason Truman beat Dewey in 1948 is because Truman, who really did not want to campaign for black folks, Walter White was putting massive pressure on Truman, Walter White folks, head of the NAACP, to desegregate the armed forces, and they were putting that pressure on him, even though the policies of Wallace were really more aligned with the NAACP. But the NAACP was also looking at it from a, quote, pragmatic position. So they push Truman. Truman agrees to certain things, and Truman makes one campaign stop in a black community, and that was in Harlem. And that just sent a ripple effect where black folks were just excited. They voted for Truman. Why is that important? That's important because What we can't get excited is when somebody simply shows up to our community. The question is, what are the policies you're advocating? And what I am saying to people is that, what Avis said, you use the existing system. Again, it's a delivery system. When I think about the issue of school choice, when I think about that whole point, when we were in Milwaukee, and the former Milwaukee superintendent, Howard Fuller kept saying, y'all tripping on charter schools. He said, the public school system, that's a delivery system. He said, you can have more than one delivery system. We have to recognize that, yes, Republican Party, Democratic Party are delivery systems. And when we talk about MAGA is recognized, this is a delivery system. So we can get into this delivery system and completely upend this delivery system. And that's why Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden never understood. They kept thinking that the Republican Party was going back to the old Republican Party. No, they weren't going back. MAGA is the Republican Party. That party has completely shifted. And I'm saying this because I need black folks who run their mouths, who bump their gums on social media, to understand, especially all y'all no tangibles, no vote people, you will never, ever change a system if you're sitting on your ass. Mm-hmm. You will never, ever see the type of candidates you claim you want if you don't vote. You will never see the type of candidates you claim you want in office. They will never, ever get to the general election if they never win a primary. And so what has the DSA done? And let me be perfectly clear. I've heard a lot of the DSA agenda from their leaders. DSA also has a white problem. Let's be real clear. Okay? All right? DSA got a white problem. They've got some issues with race that they need to confront. So I'm not advocating for the DSA. What I am doing is looking at what they have done was they've created their own infrastructure, and they now are infiltrating an existing infrastructure. They are picking and choosing the right candidates, funding them, but more importantly, they are advancing ideas that are attractive to non-DSA members. And that is the blueprint for how you create an institution within an institution that could potentially take over the institution. And last point, when Greg mentioned Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push. This is, and God bless Reverend Jackson, God bless his soul, but this is what his son, then Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. told me. He said, Roland, the greatest mistake my dad made was not keeping the infrastructure in place after he ran in 1988.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now,
absolutely.
And what he said was, he had a base of donors. He had spreadsheets. He had volunteers all across the country, white, black, Latino, Asian American, you name it. He had built out over 2 presidential campaigns this infrastructure. And he had the ability to take his infrastructure and now move it where he wanted to move it, to stand behind whoever ran in any particular year. I'll never forget when Doug Wilder, then Virginia governor, jumped into the race in 1992. One of his biggest critics of his agenda was Reverend Jackson. Governor Wilder did not last long in the race. I still personally believe that was a mistake by Reverend Jackson. But again, That was two Omegas going at each other, so that's their business. I digress. But the point I'm making, what Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. said was, and this is the mistake that I believe that many black people continue to make during election season, is that we build and create these institutions, this infrastructure, and they only last, Avis, until election day. What we have to do is take the infrastructure of a campaign and extend it beyond the campaign. And as LaTosha Brown and Cliff Albright keep saying, it has to be 365 organizing and mobilizing. So when the campaign is over the first Tuesday in November, it then shifts into, okay, what's going to be our black agenda for whoever won, even if the person that we supported didn't win. And so how do we now take between the day after the election day and the day of the inauguration to be meeting and coalescing and establishing our agenda, so when they get inaugurated, we're able to walk into the room, zoom out, we're able to walk into the room and say, here's our agenda. But what we do is, the election's over, we might be upset, mad, or euphoria, excited, and other folks are planning and plotting, either for or against whoever won. We just happen they won. And so that's why an Obama can win in 2008, and it takes black leadership 5 years to meet to establish an agenda. And you can't tell me I'm wrong, because I was actually at the meeting at the hotel when it happened. And I asked the question, what the hell took y'all so long? And then it took them 9 months to type up and disseminate what they agreed on at that meeting. So we were 6 years in before the collective black leadership had an agenda for Obama, and he only had 2 years left. And then by the time they did that, Democrats no longer control the Senate, Republicans control the Senate, Democrats control the House, and there you go. So Avis, what I want our folk to understand is we have the potential to literally reorganize, reconstruct, deconstruct, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, true black political power within a Democratic Party infrastructure that advances our issues, but it cannot be done if all we are doing is talking about it and not doing the work.
Amen, 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 amen. I have been preaching that damn sermon for years. I was in that room too, Roland. And I have to say that agenda that you're referring to, I want to be perfectly honest, it was a sliver of an agenda. Well, I'm not going to go down that lane because I have PTSD, but I will just say it was very underwhelming, okay? And so here is what I think we need to, and you're definitely right, but I would argue we need to be putting that together now, okay? I think you don't wait until after an election. I think you put it together prior to the election. And then you go to the different candidates and say, this is what is critical to the Black community. Will you commit to this? So for example, with all of the hullabaloo that's going on right now with Tellurico, and that disastrous town hall they had in Houston, my thing is, it does Black people no good to get the man in the room just to yell at him. Absolutely, it's a waste of time and energy. Why not say, we want A, B, C, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3 in those situations, and say, we need you to commit to A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z in order to earn our vote.
Here's why. Here's why, Avis. You can't go to the town hall yelling or speaking as an individual. What you just described can only happen when you come to the table through an organizational infrastructure because, and Greg, I've been looking for the quote. Lord, I need to find it. I swear I heard the quote, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture say, find me any African-American who has had any success with our community, and it was done through organization, not as an individual. I've been looking for the quote. I need to find it. If you come across it, let me know. But Avis, that's the point. If an individual stands up and yells and screams, the candidate's looking at them like, you one person. But if an individual stands up saying, I represent 2,000, 5,000, 3,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, candidate goes, oh shit. That's called infrastructure. So I think that's part of the problem, Avis. We have too many of our people showing up at events, operating as lone wolves, and we're not coming to the table in terms of organizational infrastructure, which is why the book that I'm working on, which is why the argument that I am making in the book to our black organizations is, damn it, use it and stop sitting on it for personal interest. Go ahead.
Bam. You're exactly right. I am, we cannot continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. We cannot organize to get people in office and then when they're in office, just act like we just damn happy to be here. We have to be able to come together with strategy. And I will say this one thing, what makes me excited though, as we talk about this in the abstract, is that I can also talk about this in a very specific direction because, with some work that is going on right now with major organizations that are coming together post-Calais, we are thinking about this in a very futuristic way. And we are about the work of pulling together the organizations that is cross-dimensional in terms of organization so we can move forward, in the words of my good friend, Dr. Stacy, head of the Panhellenic Council, one band, one sound. And use this in a way to really be able to say, this is a movement of various organizations convened, I will say, by Melanie Campbell, to really be able to think freely in this moment, where we need creative thinking, where we need to be able to say, this is not a moment in which we're trying to recreate what was, this is a moment in which we're trying to say what should be. And now we're coming together to do it. So I'm happy to say that we are not trying to recreate the mistakes of the past. I am excited to say we are working together to create what should have been years ago, but we're not going to cry over spilled milk. Instead, we're going to say, let's do it right this time. And I feel encouraged to say that we're engaged in that action.
I'm going to close this out, Greg, with you, but I'm going to use the point that Avis just brought up with regards to the Tallarico campaign. And this is what I mean by political sophistication. Do I believe that we as African Americans, black Texans, let me just say that, black Texans, because if your ass can't vote in Texas, your opinion don't matter in Texas. But black Texans should be making demands of State Representative James Tallarico. Black Texans should be saying, what is your agenda? Black Texans should be saying, what investment are you going to make in your campaign in black communities? Black Texans should be saying, are you utilizing African American campaign consultants, posters, field directors, things along those lines? That all should be happening. But it is grossly offensive to me as a native Texan, a native Houstonian, a registered voter in Dallas County, Texas, to listen to people who are not from Texas opine and say that because Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett did not win her primary, that we should, quote, penalize the white boy and wait for the next election. Now, the reason I find that to be absolutely idiotic, and the reason that what that says to me is that folk don't know shit about anything, is that because I look at this right here, New York Times. Trump threatens to withdraw Blanche as Attorney General, dealing blow to nomination. President Trump's threat followed a day of fruitless negotiations with two Republican holdouts, Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis. Trump says, one, Blanche can be the indefinite AG.
Yeah.
But he says, you know what? I might pull his nomination because them two gonna be gone in January. Mm-hmm. I need y'all watching and listening to understand what the hell I'm about to say. Trump saying they gonna be gone in January when the new Senate comes in. And what he's saying is, well, Republican gonna replace Tillis. Polls show Governor Roy Cooper, Democrat, is leading. Trump is thinking, well, my boy Ken Paxton is gonna replace Cornyn. Yo, if Tallarico beats Cornyn, he ain't got the votes. If Democrats hold the seat in Michigan, whether it is El-Sayed or Stevens, and if they upset Collins in Maine, you got the Democrat leading in Iowa, you have the Democrat leading in Alaska, Ossoff holds in Georgia, y'all, Texas could represent the 52nd or the 53rd vote. So if Fetterman does whatever the hell he does, his vote has now been canceled out because if you got 52, take him out, you got 51. So guess what? That means if Tallarico wins in Texas, then you totally disrupt the Trump agenda, and now he can't get a single appointment to the administration, to the federal bench, to U.S. attorneys, to U.S. marshals, any appointment without going through Democrats.
Supreme Court?
So, yeah, no, Supreme Court is what. So why in the hell would black people be articulating, nah, damn that, we ain't voting, because he beat the sister. He ran a great ass campaign. And he won. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to political sophistication. And this is what I'm saying when we have to sometimes stop being so fucking emotional.
Yes.
And understand that whoever wins is there for the next 6 years. And then all of a sudden, if a Tallarico wins, you now have broken, my last point before I go to Greg, you now will have broken a 30-year Boston, anybody who plays space know what I'm talking about, you would have broken a 30-year Boston that Republicans have run on Democrats. Mm-hmm. Because y'all, when George W. Bush beat Ann Richards, and he ran for re-election, and after 4 years, that began the total Republican rule of Texas, a state that used to be all Democratic. No Republican had won in Texas until Senator John Tower was elected in 1984. You would never think that. So Republicans control both U.S. Senate seats, the governor's mansion, lieutenant governor, the House, the Senate, the State Board of Education, Secretary of State, Attorney General, up and down, Texas Supreme Court, you name it. So why would we be short-sighted that if you're playing chess in the long game, you don't sit here and tell people to check out because you mad that the candidate you wanted didn't win in March, if your goal is to stop MAGA and to stop the GOP and to stop Trump and regain the White House and restore civil rights and restore voting rights and restore blacks getting federal contracts, and also cause these corporations to stop being scared of attacks on DEI, do y'all understand all of that happens when we effectively utilize our power? Sitting out ain't an option. Greg, final thought.
I echo what Ava said. Amen. Amen, amen, and amen. It's true. If we voted our numbers, you say it all the time, not only would Tallarico win and take it away from a man who should never hold public office, who is a deplorable, to borrow from Hillary Clinton. Ken Paxton, just as a man, seems to be the type of person that you would never want making decisions for others. He can't even hold his girlfriend's hand walking the streets of London. But not only would he win, there's a governor's race too. Greg Abbott would be out as well.
Yep.
It really isn't, it really isn't that difficult. It isn't that difficult. As I mentioned before, thinking about Steve Phillips, he said every day 7,000 people of color are added to the population, while 1,264 white people are subtracted when you look at the numbers of birth, deaths, and legal immigrants. The majority of people under 18 are people of color. 4 million young people turn 18 every year. The margin of difference in the 2024 election was 2 million people. And when you look at, like you say, Harris County, you look at Houston, if Harris County was its own state, it'd be what, in the top 5 states or top 10 states in the country in terms of population and revenue in terms of what it generates. We're looking at a simple, it may seem complicated to some people, but it is very simple. I don't want to call people stupid. I would say that, although I'm tempted, but I want to say that we have been so whipped, so beat down, so made numb by this bombarding of perpetual images. And this is why the Ellisons are fighting now, although it looks like Paramount, maybe that merger, that merger doesn't go through because people went to the ballot box in enough states to have enough attorneys general who are not the white nationalists to go to court, and maybe that gets broken up. But there's a reason they want images. There's a reason why Musk says he's going to spend $100 million and that he's targeting 5 Senate races: Alaska, Iowa, Maine, Michigan, Ohio. You just talked about all of them except Alaska. And then they're saying now the people with knowledge of this pact that he's forming is saying that they want to go into North Carolina, Georgia, and Texas. So, Tallarico can be put in the Senate. John Fetterman is already out of the Democratic Party. God bless him. I wish him a long and healthy convalescence. I hope he comes back to the state of mind that he had before he had his health challenges. And he campaigned the whole state of Pennsylvania, lying through his hooded teeth about what he said he was and wasn't going to do. But let's be very clear. Sitting out this election and waiting to the next election may not be no next election. Have you been paying attention to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, which in the ruling a couple of months ago said that you can have unlimited campaign donations to a political party and coordinate with that political party. That's what's freeing Musk up in part to do what he's doing. Last thing I'll say is this, this conversation we've been having tonight, again, the Black Star Network isn't owned by Paramount. It is not a subsidiary of any of these places. Barry Weiss can't come in and force Ross Dohat, a circus clown who has a face made for radio, cannot put him on the roster here at the Black Star Network. So this is owned and operated by the people. When you cite Cliff and Latasha, when this bozo was vomiting in the United States Capitol in his State of the Union, you had Cliff and April Albright at the Black Star Network giving the state of our union. Prior to that, when Bozo was vomiting, you had Reverend Barber there. We have everything we need. And as Steve Phillips says, they can't roll back the clock. That ship has sailed. You can assault as many people as you want, but those numbers are never going back to the good old days. There are more non-white people under 18 in this country, and it's going to get worse for you. This is their desperate last stand. Let's break their political backs. And it just requires you to get up and register, get up, check your registration, and go out and vote. Reverend Barber said 100 days leading up to it. Let's march to the polls.
Yep.
He told you that, Roland. He's telling everybody that. If we do that, don't you want your life to be better? Don't you want your grandmother to have a little bit better health care? Don't you want your children to be able to go to school and you have the things that other people have? Don't you want to be able to eat? Don't you want to be able to work one job and not have to bust your ass piecing jobs together and you still came up short at the end of the month? If you don't want any of that, I absolutely understand. Stay at home. But damn it, that's not a decision that you're making that's only going to impact you. Your ignorance gonna get us killed. And when it come down to fight in the street, you be the first one running talk about, but where's the mayor? Where's the police? Yeah, they on your ass, and it's your fault.
Last point I will make is this. Elon Musk might be the richest man in the world. You just heard what Greg said. You can go to my iPad. This was The Hill on March 30th, 2025. Musk's influence faces first big test in Wisconsin. Elon Musk dropped $25 million on the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, and he lost. I have told y'all this numerous times. You might be a billionaire, but you only get one vote. You might be able to spend $100 million on an election. That's what he's going to put in his pack. But you know what? We can kick his ass at the ballot box. If black people turn out the way we should be turned, if black people in 2026 in November turn out the way we did for Obama in 2008 and 2012, we will kick Elon Musk's ass in Georgia. We will kick his ass in North Carolina. We will kick his ass in Ohio. We will kick his ass in Texas. We will kick his ass in Louisiana. All of that can happen if we do our part. And let me be real clear. If we do our part and vote in a massive way, and if they lose, all we got to say, white folks, Latinos, Asian Americans, this on y'all. Because we did our part. But we cannot win any of these elections with 48, 52, 55, 59% turnout. No.
That's right.
It needs to be 70% or higher. And y'all, I'm telling you, if black people turn out at 70% of our numbers, and we wiped out the Republicans in those states, not only would we scare and piss off Republicans, but we would scare the hell out of every white Democratic consultant and every white Democratic pollster and every white Democratic politician, because they would not want to see that black turnout hit them in a primary.
That's right.
Greg, Avis, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. Reese, I appreciate her being on today's show as well. Folks, that is it for us. Tomorrow, I'll be broadcasting live from Santee, South Carolina. Congressman Jim Clyburn having his annual golf tournament. I missed it for the last 2 or 3 years, but I'm going to be broadcasting from there. Of course, they are celebrating there as well because South Carolina will be first in the nation for the Democratic primary in 2028. We'll talk about that and some other business as well. So look forward to being in South Carolina this weekend. Monday, I will be in Los Angeles for City Entertainers Celebrity Golf Classic. I'll have a fill-in Monday because we will not be, of course. We'll still be on the golf course, but I'll be getting some great content at the golf tournament as well. Folks, if you want to support the work that we do, please join our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. That goes to support this show and all of the shows on the Black Star Network, including our new show, No Translation with Jeff Johnson. Folks, if 20,000 folks give on average $50 each a year, that would raise $1 million. That would seriously offset the $195,000 annual expense we have. When I say annual, meaning every month. $195,000 monthly expense that we have here at the Black Star Network. Our goal is to add more shows, but that can't be done without you. I don't have some big radio or television company backing me. I don't have millionaires or billionaires. This is 100% independent. We would love to partner with other folk, but they have not been willing to do so. But it will not stop us from continuing to build. So your support is absolutely critically important. So if you want to give via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. That's for credit cards as well. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com for all ways to give. Checks and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. YouTube, folks, y'all should be hitting that like button. Let's blow it up. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Samsung Smart TV. I think we've hit 200,000 downloads. So, Keenan, let me know how many we have. You want to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag? Go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. You see our shows. MAGA chose between woke or broke. They chose broke. Also, don't blame me for the black woman. And folks, rock this shirt right here. You see me rocking the shirt today. Resist 47. That's right. This shirt that I'm wearing right now is available on shopblackstarnetwork.com. And if y'all get any of our Roland Martin Unfiltered Black Star Network swag, do me a favor, post it on social media, tag me in it. I'll show it on the show. Also, every product that you see in our studio, y'all, these are all black-owned products. Every single one of the products right here, that's right, zoom the camera out. All of these products you see right here are black-owned products, y'all. We got dolls, we got candles, we got shaving cream, we got skincare for men and women, sauces, pancake mix, a baking mix. We got dog treats, man. We got, I mean, you name it, we got it. There's all sorts of stuff. Listen, we got black-owned toilet paper and tissue. And so go to shopblackstarnetwork.com, and when you buy these products from our website, you're also supporting the show as well. And so we certainly appreciate that. And so y'all buy everything up because this is our way of helping support black-owned businesses. And that's why we created our marketplace segment on shopblackstarnetwork.com. Don't forget, download the Black-Owned app fan base. Follow me at Roland S. Martin, and I certainly would appreciate that. Folks, that's it. I'll see you. Also, I did text Councilwoman Jasmine Crockett, and she said, made it perfectly clear, she is only endorsed in one U.S. Senate race, and that is in Texas. And so she is not endorsed in any other Senate race, in any primary. So if anybody says that Councilwoman Jasmine Crockett has endorsed Haley Stevens in Michigan, it's a lie. I literally texted her an hour ago, and she said, I've only made one endorsement in a U.S. Senate race the entire year, and that has only been in Texas. She'll make the decision what she does for the general when all the primaries are over. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla!